Well, it's Sunday evening. Good evening to everybody out there that may be a part of the Sunday that I'm a part of. I did decide just to throw a quick stream up, see what's up, what's out there, who's going on. We're apparently blowing up some Houthis, whatever the hell a Houthis is, but we're blowing them the hell up, and yeah, it's a crazy day in the neighborhood. Poor Mister Rogers don't know where to go. Let me see over here on the comments. Feel free to call in 454-9932. Paste. See if that goes up there. There it is. So we're flying solo, but I did obviously I did send a link to please, but to be determined whether he joins in or not. Lots of people being swatted. Lots of these crazy leftists, these Democrats, just flying crazy. These people, they need their heads examined, and I don't know who's going to examine them because the list of the people in need is just quite large, and it's almost tragic to see how many fucking mental degenerates there are out here. Unthinkers, they're non-thinking people. They're people that don't know how to think, mainly because schools told them not how to think but how to parrot. They're parrots. They parrot information, and they'll fight to the death to argue that their information is accurate. I'm not really talking about much of anything right now, Rhea. Just talking smack, waiting to see if people want to call in. 454 area code, was it 585-454-9932? It's on the screen. Just killing time on a Sunday. Thought I'd come in to talk about anything. Politics, Idaho 4. I don't know. Who knows? Whatever people want to talk about. What are we blowing up? Well, we could blow up just about anything. I've been blowing up the Idaho 4 Facebook groups and pointing out to people that they're not just ignorant, they just don't and cannot think because they've never been taught how to think. And they believe in what they hear, like like a Muslim or a Christian or a Jehovah's Witness believes in what they hear when it comes to their religion. Yeah, so I've been blowing people up that way, pissing a lot of people off. They're calling me a bully. Can you imagine me being a bully? Man. The 911 call. I don't know if it's your Idaho Facebook group or not, but it could be. Could be. I was in there today pointing out a few of the ignorant statements some of these women are making about how guilty Koberger is and blah, blah, blah. And you can't even have a reasonable discussion with people. It's either innocent or guilty instead of innocent until proven guilty. And they don't want to talk about the proof. And that's one of the best things about the guilters, just so you know, those people that find Koberger and scream he's guilty. The best thing about the guilters is they're now using the same fucking arguments that the people that claimed he was innocent are using when it comes to the DNA. And that's an interesting argument. And that those that say transfer DNA in a house with all kinds of people that have gone through it, it could have ended up, that could have got there anyway. And now that same argument is being used by the people that claim he's guilty when you point out there's 7 DNA samples, including Koberger's, 6 of which have never been discussed or even tested. And their argument is, well, that's because it was a party house. Of course you're going to find multiple samples of DNA in there. Ignoring the fact that it's blood, that 3 of these samples were found under Maddie's nail, right? It's like, it's fucking incredible. That's what happens when you have no capacity to think. You just start grasping at straws, and then when you start grasping at your opponents and using their straws, you're too stupid to even know that's what you're doing. You think it's an original thought, but it's a thought that you've been being told for the past 2 years. So I just like fucking with the non-thinkers. People really have not been, they've been discouraged from thinking. They've literally been discouraged from thinking. And as a result, you end up online with 5.63 billion fucking morons that just argue to death that they know how to think. And they literally have no capacity to think. And I just find that to be fucking awesome, man. I mean, why the hell not? Why can't you think? Think. Innocent till proven guilty means that the suspect is completely innocent until proof beyond a reasonable doubt confirms a guilt. And that's the way it's supposed to be viewed. Period. Stop. End of story. And you've been there and picked it up and back down. Well, I don't know about any of these specific things that people want to argue. I'm just saying, let's be honest. If you want my fair, someone asked me about the phone call. I could make more of a convincing case that Dylan Mortensen is involved in this than you can make the case that Brian Koberger was involved. Hang on one second. Bear with me. I have a call from Cletus. Cletus, you're on speakerphone, Cletus. You should be speaking when you're on speakerphone.
Well, we were trying to troll you, but
I forgot you had my number.
You're calling the wrong number to be trolled. You must have been. Did you call the other number? 585-454-9932. I wonder. All right, hang up. Try that again. Anyway, I hung up on them. See if they'll try it again. Why wouldn't that have rang through here? Anyway, you can make much more of an argument that Dylan was involved than you can Brian Koberger. And that to me is somewhat effed up. And in that, hide the keypad, show the keypad. I don't know why this forwarded right to my cell phone. When they called, it should have went right through. Hang on one second, folks. But anyway, with Dylan Mortensen, you got a footprint coming out of her bedroom. Okay, you got a footprint at her bedroom door. You got a footprint in front of her door. You got a footprint related to her bedroom. And then you have blood on a handrail going from the first floor to the second floor. I'm sorry. From the second floor to the first floor. I said that in reverse. Reverse that. So you have a footprint. You have her that's upstairs during all of this chaos, according to her. You have her with a footprint, and then you have blood on a handrail going from the second floor to the first floor. There's more evidence in that chain of events that she was involved than transfer DNA on what we suppose to be at this point a brass button, right? I mean, come on, man. And my point is, and this is something else too that there you go, you're on. Cletus, Sergeant. So here's what I mean about thinking is in all fairness, you can make a case for anybody. And in this particular case, and this is what I think Americans need to be terrified of. You need to be terrified of this. Is that they're trying to put a man to death based on just technology. That's it. The supposed ping, the periodic, this could be his car, and transfer DNA. And on this, they want to put a man to death. Imagine this being one of your loved ones, one of your friends, one of your neighbors. Huh? There is nothing in this case for Koberger except technology. The same thing with Karen Reed. The same thing with the bridge guy there, the Delphi case. All of these cases, folks, are purely technological accusations. And they're open to interpretation because the technology doesn't lie. The people interpreting it does. Cletus?
No, I don't disagree with you on that at all. We stopped into our buddy Old 12's the other night, late
12
night.
days. Were there 13 people in there because you two joined?
Not yet.
There's about 20.
Yeah, there was about 20 people. He went on late. He went on real late, and we saw him go on, so we hopped in there. And he was talking about, through some of this and how the 911 call has sort of changed some minds about some things and others. But, I asked the question, or told her to ask the question of, I get the impression he feels like they've got the right guy. And
the only reason I put Cricket Day on the screen is because of her statement. Go ahead.
He seems to believe that they got the right guy, right? And I said,
he's a Jeff H guy.
Well, and I said, that's fair. You can believe that, but is having the right guy or building a proper case the most important thing? you know. And it was funny because you could see him kind of trip up. Because I mean, I like 12 gauge. I think he's a reasonable.
Yeah, I like the guy too. He's a friendly guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could tell it tripped him up, right? Because I think that is the problem. We all get in our feelings about the situation, but we forget this is just one situation of many and endless situations, right? Because at the end of the day, any of us could be Brian Koberger.
And the thing with this case is it's all technological. And that bothers me in that you have to now convince a jury that what you're claiming is Koberger's car. They're going to have to go along with that because there is no evidence to support that except for some filthy fucking cop saying it. And even if he's right, in the end, it's not right because it's proof. It's right because he's telling you a story you believe in.
Right.
Right? That's what I mean. People don't think anymore. They don't understand that he's completely innocent unless the evidence presented goes beyond a reasonable doubt. And so, we're stuck in this judicial system. Look what they're doing now. Trump he's taken out people that have at gunpoint and knife point not only raped, murdered, and pillaged, but taken over apartment complexes. And he's arresting them and shipping them the fuck out of here. And there's judges telling them to turn the plane around, bring them back. The judge needs to get on the plane with them. Fair enough.
I can't argue that. I don't know the details of it, but I mean, just based on those statements, yeah, I can't.
I would never give you a statement just to make myself feel good or be right. That's exactly what happened,
Yeah.
And so people will support that judge like he's trying to praise. He's human rights. Human rights. What about the people that were kicked out of their apartment complex or raped? Don't they have any rights, or they're just because they're an American? Which too many people in this country don't like this country. They need to just get their fucking ugly asses out. That's it. Get out. I don't care if you're a fucking supermodel. You're an ugly fucking, your inner ugly is showing. Get out. Get out. Right?
I can't argue that either.
So, it's time Americans stood up and been Americans. These people that want to scream for innocent or guilt need to be barked down. Because there's no other way to get people to listen. And you piss someone off enough times and they stay pissed off, they might begin to start thinking about why they're pissed off. If not, you got a victory. You got a victory, and at least you got someone pissed off, because their ignorance is just overwhelming. How they'll fight tooth and nail that Brian stalked these people, not knowing that if you listen to the hearing, the prosecutor themselves have admitted that never happened.
Yeah,
and that really is shameful to me that this judge, and this is what I mean by the technological aspect. These cases are all connected that way. And even looking for Sebastian Rogers, everybody depends on the technology, and we're going to fuck ourselves doing this. And not in a good way, right?
No, I mean, I think this, you could, in a sense, take a snapshot of this case. You don't see any traditional police work. You don't see any indication of any traditional police work. In fact, everything that's being presented at trial per the prosecution's list is all based on things that, technology provided.
Right.
And when you consider the case that they say that they've built, it's all based on technological interpretations and evidence. But did they go knock on doors? We see no indication of that. Did they go 5 miles down the road and check the doorknobs or his office for DNA match to the sheath? We don't see any indication of that. So it's a good.
Did they strip search the survivors? Did they have the survivors report to a hospital? Did they have a female cop strip search them? Look for any injuries or scratches or anything could indicate their participation in the crime? That should have happened. Right?
Yep.
There's so much more that they could have done gumshoe-wise. And here's why technology is so dangerous, folks, is that even the people that came to examine that scene were completely ill-equipped. My argument against the DNA isn't that it ain't Brian Koberger's. It's that it's on a movable object, as Ann pointed out, and I'll adopt that particular thinking, and it's within a building and a crime scene that 90% of the people that wandered around and in and out of it had no protection to stop shedding their transfer DNA, which could have included Koberger's. Did this continue in the lab? Did this continue when it was moved around the police department, moved to the state police, moved from the state police to Othram Labs? There's just none of the people, the human interactive needs to be on point. It needs to be concise. And we've supplanted that with the idea that technology can tell us what we want to know. And as even, I'm not completely on board with Truth and Transparity's interpretation of a Delphi video she did yesterday. And I think she suffers from the same thing as me, as she tries to explain the same thing too much and you get lost because you feel like you're not being understood. That's kind of where I come from. But I think she made a great point, and that the girls were alive beyond the time the state is saying they were taken off of that trail and murdered. She showed a video that showed the girls were on the bridge after the 43-second video, and I agree with her. That doesn't mean the person that was on the trail that walked by them didn't kill them, but it does mean that after that person walked by and said hi, that for a time, sometime after, many minutes after, the next image of the girl on the bridge is from that same area. So she's making a good point. It still doesn't eliminate that guy as a potential suspect, but it does argue that the prosecution is wrong in their interpretation of the technology. And that's what I'm seeing here with the Kohlberger case. If that makes any sense one way or another.
No, it does.
And we just rely too much on it. We you know, I mean, it's become part of our daily life. And look, I think technology is awesome. I like telling the lights to turn on and off. I got my Alexa to say something cool today.
What'd you get it to say?
I got a skeeter on my Peter, whack it off. Oh man. Yeah, I got her to say my balls itch too. I get that. It's funny the things you can get a woman to say, even a mechanical woman. It's just amazing, Cletus.
Oh, since you told me you got yours to say that, I've made ours say all kinds of shit. It's ridiculous.
It's fucking funny. Skeeter on my Peter, whack it off. It's just stupid, bro. So yeah, I have fun. I have Renee here cleaning the house. And she stepped away for a few days, and I can't fucking find anything. I want to pull my hair out, bro. It's insane. And then the stuff that she did nice work. I'm not complaining about her handiwork, but, you know, she puts the plates on the side of the kitchen that she thinks they should be on. And that's not the side of the kitchen they've been on for the last 20 years. So I'm like losing my fucking, where's the fucking silverware? Where are the knives? Where are the pots and pans? Well, they're in the storage under the oven. Well, I don't keep them in the storage under the oven. I keep them on top of the oven so I can see what they are and pick and choose. Holy shit, bro. Where's my toothbrush? My shaver. Yeah, so I've been like, you know, I had to scream. I had to talk about something, anything. So it's like an escape from the chaos I've surrounded myself with. Then I got baffled by a curtain rod. I'm like, uh-oh, I better not share that with people. But literally, this Chinese-made curtain rod. I finally figured it out, but with much more effort than should have been required. Because once you see what you got to do, it's the simplest thing in the world.
She's going to come back. You're going to complain about everything that she moved.
No, I learned not to complain to women, bro.
She's going to say, well, I mean, I cleaned it. And you're going to say, no, you fucking moved it all. And she's going to say, okay, here's a bottle of hand sanitizer. Good luck. You don't need to clean. You just need to sanitize as you use it.
Yeah, no, she's both a guest and a hired help. She's guest / hired help. She's an ex-girlfriend. She's one part of the twins, the identical twins. Unfortunately, her sister passed away a couple of years ago. But I've known them for a long time, man. And they're a bit fucking, well, they can't be all there. They hang out with me, and they did. At least one of them still does. So, and I did have to buy a new shower curtain. I bought new things for my bed. Yeah. So anyway, Cletus, it's one of them things. But I'm on that kick. Then here, I found out I go out to my swimming pool, right? Because I'm going to start the vet. I'm going to start the race car up and let it warm up. Did all of that. Turn around, walked over to the pool. And there ain't one single drop of water in the fucking thing. It's all gone. All of it. So maybe a seam burst on the bottom of the pool. I don't know. But it's empty of water, please. I don't know what I call it now. Can't call it a swimming pool because the main ingredient is gone.
It's an empty reservoir. There you go.
It's a hole.
It's a hole.
I got me a hole in the backyard, Cletus.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to see if Alexis will repeat that. Sergeant has a missing shower. I do. I had a burgundy shower curtain, and I was told that it was the wrong color for the bathroom. Get a blue one. And so I don't know where the red one went, and so I had to get a blue one because otherwise, how was I going to shower? Was I hang a bed sheet on there like Brian Koberger? Come on now. He wraps himself in bed and shower curtains and goes and commits multiple homicides and walks away. Maybe it was the shower curtain that leaked some of his transfer DNA. What say you, Cletus?
Hey, it could be. It could be.
Or that bubble wrap.
Maybe he was playing with the K-bar in the shower, and that's how his transfer DNA got there.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's name needs to be associated with the worst luck in the world. He's got like 8 quintillion fucking reasons not to have any connection to that case yet. There he is.
If I were him and I didn't do this and I was found not guilty, I would become a fucking knife manufacturer in the state of Idaho.
I would too, bro. And I would be exclusively in fucking knives that are stronger than K-bars.
Yeah.
That would be my motto. K-bar, try a Koberger. I'd name it after myself too. BK, knives and fucking deadly weapons.
Call it a K-burger.
A K-burger. You don't got a K-bar, you got a K-burger. Yeah, it's burgundy is a nice color, ladies. It's a strong color. Did you know purple isn't really a color in the spectrum of light, Cletus?
No, I did not know that.
Purple is extrapolated within the mind's eye and brain. That's the only place to which it exists. I thought that was a weird fact. But, you know, I'm full of useless facts, so.
Oh, Lord. We go from fucking Idaho to Trump and shipping people on planes to fucking cleaning his house to shower curtains to purple is not a real color.
Didn't you see the title of it?
Yeah.
Flying Solo. Imagine being me. People ought to have a bit more sympathy for me. What the fuck? But that ain't coming. It's not in my cards, Cletus. I can't complain. What's Clue doing? She looking for wedding dresses?
Sitting here playing solitaire.
Solitaire?
Yeah.
It's the only game where you lose to yourself, I guess.
She's on level like 875,246.
Jesus. Purple is a flavor, not a color. And purple would be my favorite non-color, according to Christina. Let's take a peek at some of these. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Where'd she go? Let's see who's in here. We got Kittens in here. Got Great Pearl. She just looks mad. Look at her. Look at this. She got them big ass glasses on. She looks disappointed. You know what I mean? That's the look you get when you come home from a hard day's worth of work. Forget that. Let's see what Rhea's got for. Rhea's got a nice flower for us. Great Pearl's got that you're late look on her face.
Sarge's trolling his only fucking. He's even trolling his fucking watchers. Oh, it's fucking funny.
Trolls his own audience. Look, Salty Grace she looks happy. Although, you know, who knows? She's got a drink in her hand. That could help. That always helps when it comes to your level of mood. Right? Nothing wrong with a good old drink. What the hell? What do we got? We got was his. Was his. She's thinking half is mine. That name tells her, don't marry her, guys. Was his. This shit was his. You like my Chevy truck? It was his.
Oh, you've had the caffeinated fucking fruit sodas today, hadn't you?
Well, I'm drinking Sun-Kissed Orange.
Oh, fuck.
It's been a few days. Candy kitten. There you go. What is this? Like it's a typo. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's what I was trying to tell the judge when I got divorced. Is this a typo? I remember standing up and saying, if I had a pair of tits, you wouldn't be saying that. Banged on the desk. Oh, you another outburst like that, you're going to jail. I'm thinking I'd probably be safer in there than being in this divorce court. Good God, Cletus. Man. And I got some suspicious people at my corner store.
Suspicious?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to pay $4 for a bag of fucking chips, I'd probably look suspicious too, because I'm probably about to steal them.
I told him for Christmas I should have bought him those hamburger masks from fucking McDonald's. All right. Let's see what's Heather got to say. Heather's WTF, and look at, we don't know what Heather is in that picture. It looks like the scene, the scene eye that went blind. I don't know what that is, Cletus. Do you?
I believe it's a solar eclipse.
It's the claim, but I don't think there's any evidence to support that. Fucking technology. What's Christina saying?
It may be the negative of a picture of a belly button too. I don't know.
It could be an any. Cletus for the win. It's a moon picture. Everybody's got it because, you take what you're told and you run with it. Why not? I don't know. I look at it and I see an eye. A rather stoned eye of some sort. Who knows? You being so mean to Gray Pearl for? I'm not being mean to Gray Pearl. She got that look. Nothing wrong with that. You see look at my fucking mug. I'm nothing to brag about. Look at Cletus. Unbelievable.
Hey, I'm proud of that sculpture made after me that I didn't even know was fucking made.
They covered the clouds up and called it an eclipse. I thought it was an 8-ball until she said solar eclipse the other night. See, Miss W's on there with me. She knows. Where's Carl? Carl. The love match made in fucking Sergeant Friday's channel. You guys aren't going to last. Oh, my God. It's crazy. They ought to try Plenty of Fish or something.
Who?
To me, it's deep sea fishing, and all you're pulling up from there is I don't even want to say it. But anyway, yeah.
Hey, motherfucker. We met on there.
I know you did, motherfucker. That lady talk of yours is so alluring.
She got told the other day.
She got what?
There was this chick that was talking about, her kid and had been murdered and this and that, and she had a GoFundMe and all this shit. She was just being fucking nasty, and Clue happened to be on the fucking panel, and she said, well, if we're going to talk about kids, can I ask a question? Do you have a birth certificate? And this fucking chick got mad as fuck, and she was like, you're nasty. And she was like, as a pig, motherfucker.
As a pig, motherfucker. Jesus Christ. Well, listen, on the note of the pig, this guy fucking somehow gets strapped on a boat, sinks and shit, and him, dog, he's got his dog, and him and his dog end up on a deserted island. And the only other thing on the deserted island is a pig. Well, a month, 2 months go by, and the guy's there all alone. One night he sneaks over towards the pig, and the dog growls. And the guy steps back away from the pig. A few weeks, another month goes by, and the dog is somewhere on the island, and the guy sneaks over and starts rubbing the leg of the fucking pig, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the dog attacks him. He's like, what the fuck? So another 6 months or so goes by, and out of nowhere, another boat washes up on shore, and this beautiful fucking woman is there. And he's all excited. And he's like, oh, my God, it's so amazing you're here. He said, can you do me a big favor? She goes, what? He goes, can you hold that dog? You don't get that? Cletus?
No, I can't say as I do.
There's something wrong with you.
So we can go fuck the pig?
Yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway, maybe I didn't tell
What's
the joke.
wrong?
No.
I can't believe you didn't get that.
What up there? Who's that? Thomas Sharp. What's up, Thomas Sharp? Listen, we can even have people, if people aren't going to call in, they're welcome to click in. You can even talk directly with a famous Cletus, who isn't really Cletus.
Or famous.
We have to have some appeal to the show. Shh. Don't give up our secrets. What's the matter with you?
I thought Gray
safe.
Pearl's angry look was the appeal of the show.
Oh man. So I don't know. How are we doing with the Sebastian case?
You'd have to ask Sumner County Sheriff's Office because the rest of us have heard nothing.
No arrests? No, none of that?
None of that. Not a damn thing.
Ain't that shit some fucking funny? That's some fucking funny, ain't it?
It's wild.
Yeah. There's yeah, that's wild, man. All that shit talk. Yep, it's tragic, man, beyond tragic. And that other, they found the body, but obviously it wasn't, thank God, the young boy by a power plant or something, right?
Oh yeah, out in Memphis. Yeah.
Oh man, Heather's saying you were a crash test dummy or some shit there, Cletus.
No, I was never in that band. Was never in that band.
That's a band?
Yeah, the crash test dummies.
That's a stupid name for a band. What kind of songs did they sing?
It was back in the
Doesn't matter.
90s.
They all tanked.
Fucking Hokey Pokey or something? What?
No, it was like I don't know. It was some weird era of the 90s, right, where you had grunge and then kind of grunge, but not grunge, and I would put them in that bucket.
Yikes! So did you you guys you went over that phone call, you two? What did you think of that phone call to 911?
Not gonna lie, you're gonna give me a lecture, and that's fine. But it actually made me a little less suspicious of Dylan.
And that's fine. Why did it?
Because so I had pointed out on Jay's stream the other day, I was like, if you listen to the cleaned up by YouTube, awesome channels, if you listen to the regular one, you can hear when I think Bethany starts out on the phone, then another girl gets on, but then at one point another girl gets on and she says, "Hi, this is Dylan," and she stays on the phone. But when Hunter is trying to get into Xana and Ethan's bedroom,
Right.
you can hear Dylan whisper, either we should or should we warn Kaylee? And I just don't see that girl being smart enough to be forward thinking enough, if she's like done something, to be covering her tracks like that.
Yeah, I didn't hear that or see that even in any of the transcripts.
Yeah, that's because I'm the smartest and the best at this game. But she absolutely says it 150,000%. You can hear her say it. Should we or we should warn Kaylee?
Yeah, well, I do think that she has. Hang on a second here. Allow. Who that?
Hey, this is Delby Rush. I used to go by Ty Knot, but I had to change it because there's ties everywhere on the TY. So I talked to you a couple months ago, I think.
Ty Knots. Hang on one second, Ty Knots. I want to hear a clue summation on what you were saying, and then you can hear Clue?
Okay.
No, they can't hear us.
All right, so
I heard her.
you did? You just heard her now?
He's got him on speaker, so he
All
can.
right, good.
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It just made me less suspicious of her because it's like you are worried about the girls upstairs, even though you didn't go upstairs. Clearly, you're worried about them.
Yeah, I think that is a strong. If that was completely like just spit out from like nowhere, I could see how that does then shed a different light on her any involvement in anything.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that in the stream, but I can say that some of the things that she does do are just so convenient that, like, I don't know why didn't they go and knock on the doors or open the doors themselves?
That I would never be able to figure out ever. Like, because you're obviously unless they just woke up. But how do you sit in that room for 2.5 hours?
Well, the police said the doors were both open when he arrived, so we don't know that they were open all night or that they were open by people that got into the house before the police. There's a lot we don't know.
Well, I can tell you, you can hear Hunter in the call. You hear him literally banging on the door. You hear him knocking like frantically.
Okay, so they opened the door.
Yep.
See, this stuff I didn't. So where did you hear this from? From what call did you get that from?
It's on the call. It's on you got to find an original version, and you have to go in a room, be quiet, and just listen. It's all there, I promise you.
Okay. Yeah.
Talk to your caller.
Tie knots. That isn't tie knots anymore.
So, yeah, I use W Rush now. Yeah, I just called in to complain to you a little bit.
Go ahead and complain. We love complaints. This is the help desk.
This Idaho 4, the whole thing just is one of the biggest disasters I've ever seen all the way around. Every part of it is wrong. It's just unnatural. Is incoherent. And I'm talking mostly about the YouTube coverage, the channels on there,
Right.
the people and the things they say and do. And I mean, like right now, you're talking about if a door is open or up or down and such or whatever, and you guys are trying to atomize subatomic particles. Okay, every little piece of evidence is not the whole case. You can't just analyze one thing as if it's the whole picture. It's not.
But don't 1 + 1 = 2, and you take each part and put it together to paint a picture?
Yeah, but I'm saying you have to have more than one. You can't just have the steps. You have to include. So like for example, well, first of all, yeah, 1 + 1 = 2. I meant to tell you about that. Last time I was talking to you, you were telling me that 1 + 1 is 3.
Yep, 2, the mother and dad and a child. There you go. You got 3.
No, it's actually 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. You're combining the left side of the first equation with the right side of the second equation.
Right.
You can't skip. Yeah, you can't skip the step. But that's what a lot of people do in this case. Is I'm seeing that they're doing that and not realizing it. But anyway, just seems like I don't know how do people keep going back and forth between they're not witnesses or involved or they are. I mean, that's clear as can be. There's just no possible way that everything they're saying that they did and what happened is true. It can't be.
I don't think at this point they themselves know what's actually true. And or if they do, I mean, what are the options? They either have they're just mistaken and confused, or they're trying to keep something secret.
Well, they're trying to keep something secret. And what people have to keep in mind is that they weren't, they weren't just sitting around, I don't know, playing cards for 8 hours. They were getting advice from people. And the advice that came down from the Greek Council, you know this, is you never want to be a witness. I mean, you never want to know anything. And so that's why they're saying they keep trying to put themselves in a position where they didn't see anything. They didn't know anything. Because that's the only way you can stay out of it.
No, I've said that right from the beginning, that the 2 people that were in that home, I don't get into the Banfield and the grub truck bullshit. I pay attention to what facts were released to us. And based on what we've been given, those are the only 2 people that you can consider involved because they admit before, during, and after that they were there.
Yeah.
So they're either comprehension of what was going on. They either had prior knowledge or became aware of a previous threat that all of a sudden came to life under their own nose. Or, in other words, I just can't imagine 4 people being killed this way and it being done in a vacuum by some guy named Brian that just came and decided to start wiping people out and yet leave 2 women in the home. And one that he walked by and she says he looked right at me. I can't buy that because as an ex-criminal and then someone that's been reformed for 30 years, none of this makes sense to me unless you're trying to hide your involvement or you're trying to hide what you know. And that's what the sense that I get from Dylan. That's why some of these little microscopic things you're hearing with the phone calls, that's why some of these little things are important. If you don't know some of the things that can be verifiably heard, and I'm sure Clue will provide us, the timestamp on when she heard that. And my point is, some of these little things can help you shape an understanding of what the person may or may not be thinking or doing. I honestly always thought that her description of the perpetrator was so far away from it being her, and yet it led off with her when she said he was about my height, and then she described somebody of her own build, and then immediately it turns to in black, and then later the bushy eyebrow, then later the fireman. But it's everything that she describes places her nowhere in the picture. In other words, it's so abstract.
She was there, but she wasn't there. Is what she's trying to say.
Right, and I don't buy that.
No, and everything you just said about the two, Bethany and Dylan, I agree with all of that. But what my biggest complaint is when people look at something like a phone call or a transcript of text messages, and they want to go back and start from square one. Somehow they think there's some little thing in that that's going to suddenly turn it around and say, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. Why? Yeah, they didn't know.
Well, the biggest thing that bothers me, if you go back to square one, is what we're being shown now should never have been sealed. They had no business sealing it, and the only reason they sealed it was to convict Kohberger in the public. And I'm not saying he's innocent. Let me be clear. He's innocent until proven guilty. I don't stand on the idea that this guy didn't do it. I don't stand on the idea the guy did do it. But I do want to stand on the evidence that they're showing me. And I said in the opening of this stream, I could make an as effective or a more effective argument, the so-called survivors. You can make more of an argument of their involvement than you can Brian. Because none of the video and none of the phone evidence connects Brian to the house. The only thing that connects him to that house is a transfer DNA sample that originally identified from Othram Labs 4 brothers. That was its that transfer DNA went through Othram, and they started to look at 4 brothers and even called one of them.
Even called one, yeah. That's a big step. That's a big step to call a person and ask for their DNA.
And somebody's saying, well, it was a low count sent to Morgan. It wasn't so low that they didn't put the effort in. And here's the point that I made. When you have any sample of no identification, 0, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of hits because DNA is 99.9% the same in all of us. Mm-hmm. A paternity test isn't a match. A paternity test is a statistical match of 12 different markers. And the guy with the most, never the guy with all 12, but the guy with the most wins. So in a paternity test, I was found to have 4 markers of a child, and I never effed that girl, ever. Never. But yet 4 of my markers matched her child. I was considered not the father. Right? But I never had sex with this girl. So it's DNA, when you take an unknown sample and submit it, it's not like a fingerprint where it will lead to exactly one person. It leads to tens, and they even admitted that in their paperwork. They had as many as 650,000 hits when they entered that sample. You see? So to me, the transfer DNA, I accept it as it can identify Brian. I bet it can identify several people. But what about the 6 other samples they didn't do the same thing with?
Well, that's the whole thing. The only thing I want is a legitimate investigation.
Right. And I don't want to depend on just technology. I don't want you to tell me what this picture shows me. I don't want you to tell me what that ping means. I want something to show me Kohberger was in the home.
Yeah. Right. And I want to know the story on these other DNAs too, because you have to know about them before you can say Brian did it.
Well, at this point, even the judge, this is another thing too. Our Black Lives Matter, and I'm not a supporter of their message, but I'm a supporter of what they were trying to point out, which is the corruption is systemic within the system. And for a judge to say that DNA may mean other people were involved and still carry forward with Brian's prosecution and allow the defense to continue to do, or the prosecution to do what they're doing, is to me a miscarriage of justice. This man should not be a judge.
Oh, that's completely irresponsible.
That he's supposed to protect you from government overreach. That's the main purpose of a judge. The main purpose of a judge isn't to reinforce the prosecution. It's to protect the citizen who's innocent until proven guilty from being ran over by his government.
But even if he doesn't want to protect Brian Kohberger's rights, Well, there's more people that they could be, out there on the loose that we need to
Yes.
get off the street.
Yes. And that's the funny thing. These people that want to argue innocent or guilt don't understand that if you're a citizen of this country, it's the process that matters, not the outcome. You follow me?
Yeah,
I want to know.
definitely.
I want to know, even if it was a speeding ticket, there's a process under which you produce this ticket. If your radars aren't recalibrated and you're giving people tickets right and left, or you're intentionally setting a speed trap in your town to nail people, that's a problem. It goes way beyond murder. It goes right down to the daily events that your law enforcement officials are practicing. I don't want a guy going to jail longer because he's black than me because I'm white. That's bullshit. We both did the same crime. I want equal punishment. I don't want plea deals that allow you to plead to a lesser charge. Absolutely not. Show me convincingly that I pled guilty to that and make an exception on the sentence because I'm willing to cooperate with the justice system, but leave me with that charge. Do you follow me?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because it's, we're trying to stay in reality here. What did you really do? Well, you're going to plead to something you didn't do.
Right. That's what they end up having you do. And where's the sense in that?
Exactly. Yeah, 'cause it's not real. So in it builds. We've got mountains and mountains and mountains of criminal histories out there. We wouldn't know what part of it was true or not true.
Somebody's asked me, are you Greg Hughes?
Who?
Greg Hughes?
Gray Hughes?
Greg Hughes or Gray Hughes. Yeah. Is that who you are?
Oh, Gray Hughes. Am I Gray Hughes?
You sound just like him according to what
No.
Okay.
No, but you know who I do sound like sometimes? Which I hate to admit, but every now and then, that guy, Murphy Knows All, used to be.
You don't sound anything like him. Yeah.
No, you sound more like Gray Hughes than that guy.
There are times when I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like me when I was on your call.
What'd you say, Cletus? Cletus.
I said, no, he sounds way more like Gray Hughes than he does.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
I always thought Gray Hughes was pretty smooth on there, but.
Yeah, well, you got that smoothness. You got that smoothness. You got the tone of voice.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, to me, that's a compliment. Now, the way his mind works, I don't see any similarities there at all.
I think the biggest problem for most of us is that we really have never been taught how to think. We're given the context of what we're looking at or what we're dealing with, and people run with that context rather than trying to see if the context is even valid. That's what thinking does.
I was doing a little research and I came across something. You know what the actual real problem is? It's two things. One is that we're wired. The biggest part of adapting and becoming a part automatic, and we don't even know we're doing it. Every time you get around somebody, you're automatically trying to get in synchrony with them, a little bit, and that can go too far. But so many people, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where basically it's safer to be stupid and just believe in stupid things that are wrong. And that's the undertow. See, we're all trying to swim on, well, not all, but we're trying to swim on the surface where we can get some air and figure out what's really happening. But that undertow of stupidity in everything you interact with in society, it's like you're saying, like a lot of these YouTube channels, when you interact with them, you're hurting yourself. I mean, you're literally harming yourself by engaging with that. But that's what it is. It's an undertow of stupidity that everybody, doesn't want anyone else to stand out at all.
I think it's an undertow. I'd rather call it an undertow of ignorance because stupidity can't be fixed. Ignorance is just a lack of knowledge and you're just being lazy, and that can be fixed.
No, but it can't be. What I'm talking about cannot be fixed. It's intentional. It's rewarding, and this is what people want. It's what they pursue. It's what they desire. It's stupidity. Which stupidity meaning they are absolutely wrong about something. But they like it because it solves their whatever kind of dissonance they're experiencing.
Well, there's one person, I'm not going to mention their name, but to them it's not a matter of being right and wrong. It's a matter of getting attention from taking an adverse position.
Yeah, I know who that is.
And it's enough to,
Everybody knows who that
and
is.
you just want to meet the guy in broad daylight and just, you know, show him what the sun is, because it's just insane to
But
me.
yeah, but that's at the level. In all honesty, I spent years, doing neurological evaluations of people for a living, and I'm telling you, what he has going on, that's not. He thinks that he's in control of that, and he thinks that he's being, sneaky Pete or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not. He's not in control of it. That's
No.
pathology. There's nothing.
That's why I'll have nothing to do with the person, because I identified that right away a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
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 And
All
I
you
don't
do
like
is
to be
drag down,
contrary just to
drag
be, I don't like to be contrary just to be different or just to be contrary. I'll be contrary when I think that there's a sufficient amount of facts to be contrary. If there's not, there's different things that people see or I miss, and I'm happy to hear other people come in and point this out. Like I think being wrong is the first simplest step to recognize that and learn. You got to start somewhere. You weren't born knowing how to tie your fucking shoes, so you got to be wrong. And as you're willing to accept that you can be wrong, then your mind is able to learn. And people just think like there's a crime to be wrong, and it's not criminal. It's not to be frowned upon. You should be happy when you realize that, you know what, that's awesome. I just learned something. So that people that want to be contrary constantly, just doing it for attention, for self gratification, or to make them feel like they're important or part of something. Look, I'm in here making fun. I'm in here making fun of my fucking audience. I don't give a fuck.
Well, no, what he's trying to hold off some. He's got something in him that he's trying to get away from or stay away from. The only way he can satisfy it is by these actions. He does. When he does it, he gets a little relief from whatever it is that he would never know any of this, but that's what it is. And that's at a level. There's another one with a channel that he clearly has some pathology, because first of all, his affect is so flat. His face is so flat all the time.
You don't mean Mr. Potato Head, do you?
I don't know the nickname. I'm talking about.
That's a nickname I assigned somebody. He's a nice guy though, but he's just so monotone. Yeah.
I'm talking about somebody who drinks too much.
Oh no. That's not my buddy.
Not Frank.
I'm talking about 12 gauge, and I just fuck with him. I said that to remember that on the stream one day. I go, Cletus, don't he remind you of Mr. Potato Head?
Yep.
He was like, you're just fucked up, Sarge.
Yeah, that's the Dunning-Kruger. He's like the king of the Dunning-Kruger crowd.
Yeah, he's something different, man. He's all right though. I like the guy. I don't give
I'm talking about the drunk turkey guy.
Oh, I don't like that guy at all. You know why I don't? I'll tell you why I don't like him. It's not a matter of like or dislike. I have no respect for a man that'll go on TV with one point of view, get humiliated, and then completely change his point of view to conform with the group of people that just humiliated him, because his only motive is to become part of the mainstream message, the mainstream media. That's all he cares about.
Uh-huh.
And so, he'll sacrifice. He doesn't. In other words, he doesn't have. Cletus, Clue. What do you call someone that stands by their word, or they'll stand by a conviction?
Integrity.
Yeah, that's it. He has no integrity. He's just a scumbag. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying he's more than just a scumbag. I'm saying he's dangerous because his flat aspect, it never changes. His face just always looks the same. It's just like,
Yeah, he's got that act where he's Mr. Monotone. Yeah, his presentation I'm not happy with, but it's just that his integrity of he almost went in there trying to point out where the law enforcement possibly made mistakes in the Koberger case, and they just humiliated him. And then it was the second time he was called into mainstream media, and now he's he changed, and now everything is about showing how guilty Koberger is. And listen, I don't object to people thinking one way or the other. I just would like if you're going to tell me the guy's guilty, show me the evidence that conclusive, that's beyond a reasonable doubt, or even reasonable. Show me something reasonable, like when Brett Payne gets on the stand and he's asked in all the 51 terabytes of data, and he goes, it's 64. Okay. In all of that, does any of your video footage of the car identify that it belonging to Mr. Brian Koberger? And he says no. Well, what do you mean no? How the fuck can a cop tell you no? Aren't those the images you're using to accuse it of being his car? And the answer to that question is obvious. It's yes. So how could the lead cop get on the stand and be asked such a pointed question and answer with a no? How did the judge let the case go forward?
Exactly. I mean, well, we know why, though.
Right.
We know why. And why we're on our third judge, I think we know why that, too. They've separated the whole beginning process with the PCA. It was on, what's her name? I can't remember her name now, the judge, the first judge.
Oh, that woman there. Yeah. The magistrate that signed the warrant, you mean?
Yeah. And then we got Judge John Judge, and he did all the things he did. And he's the one who actually made the ruling, I guess, why there has to be more transparency now.
Let me just say, this case would have been better off if it stayed in his court. And the reason it would have been better off is because Judge made a point for the prosecution to come forward and say without any chaos that they did not rely on the IGG to identify Brian Koberger. The state did not start their case there. The state did not use that to identify Brian. And he got Bill Thompson to say that in open court. Now what they're saying is the PCA don't matter because of the DNA, the IGG work.
Yeah.
And Judge got Bill Thompson to come out twice and say that had nothing to do with bringing the case against Brian. Now it's the whole case. Judge John Judge wouldn't have let that slip. This judge isn't even aware that happened. And I'm surprised Ann isn't making a bigger issue of that and actually filing complaints against Bill.
Yeah, she leaves a lot on the table, in my opinion. She gets confused sometimes, and she says, the one time I couldn't even believe, she said, well, but the thing leads to another thing, and this thing, like literally she said three things. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
I think she made a mistake arguing in the last case, in the last argument over the IGG. She should have just said a very simple thing, that the state's argument that the IGG wasn't used to identify my client is now being said to be the only means under which they identified them. And that's why I'm arguing all these other warrants need to be shot down.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And she should include that, the argument that you just made. She should include that with every single thing she does that she's trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
Wherever she can say that, and keep it the same. Just word it exactly the same.
So.
And over and over. But one of the things that bothers me about the way people view this is that people. I mean, to me, it's important. I know you like to keep like a little tighter on the facts, but Bethany Dillon and Jack Showalter are friends from high school.
Right.
And that's a definite click from Boise. Okay. And it's just, it's really odd to me. They have another click at 1122, which includes Hunter Johnson and Emily Alon. All right. So starting at about 10 o'clock, how is it that, this Boise crew, they're always, like, from the beginning, from 10 o'clock on, there's one of this Boise crew supervising Kaylee and Maddie. And even, like, after they get home at 2:10, Dylan having some kind of exchange with Gower. I mean, you know, and during this whole thing, the University of Idaho's intranet is turned off. They don't have a single picture from the University of Idaho. That's impossible.
Yeah, the whole that's the meat of this case isn't who did it, and it's not whether Brian did it or not. The meat of the case is, in my view, what have they produced and come forward with that locks Mr. Kohlberger into that home during that particular period of time that they claim is the time of the crime. The only thing that we have to suggest the time of the crime are communications between Dylan and Bethany, but we don't know. We don't know if, in fact, that time period was the time that the crimes took place. There's no way to really know that, and you will never know that because you can't take anything that they've produced so far as written in stone. The call, like you're mentioning, at 2:10 a.m., she calls that guy Gower. Gower's connected to these other kids. In other words, there's just too many open doors. And for me, you know, coming from a background of I've represented myself 3 times in court, and I won all 3 times. And they were criminal cases. And then the 4th time was a divorce. And that ended up turning out exactly the way I told my wife it would turn out before she filed, to her dislike. But anyway, when you look at that crime scene, I don't see an outside intruder. I see the crime scene as a crime scene from within. There's no indication. They argue burglary, but there's no mention or any indication of forced entry on that home. Who let this person in? How did they get in? They don't know. So let's start with that. Let's take that out of the picture. What are you left with? You're left with a home that's closed up with 6 adults in there minimum. Were there other people pre-positioned in the home? Was there somebody in that house waiting for these people to get back? Did somebody come to the house between 3 and 4? So that's the way I tend to want to look at it based on the facts they gave us. Yeah. And then the location of the sheath. I don't know how that gets underneath one of the victims, underneath a comforter, unless you slide it there yourself. Why would the sheath end up there?
Oh, it probably wouldn't. And
it would if one of the victims had that knife. If one of those victims had that knife to defend themselves or to warn the attacker off and lost control of their own knife, that would explain it.
I don't even think about the sheath anymore because the only thing that matters about that is the fact that it showed 4 brothers, not Brian Kohlberger. And for some reason, they left the brothers alone and went after Kohlberger.
Well, you know who had 4 brothers, right?
Kopaka?
Yeah. I'm not impugning the guy. That's just an obvious fact. That's a stateable fact. I don't suggest that he's involved in it either. However, that is interesting. Is it possible they had a mixed sample? That's what I'm seeing here. Is it possible there's a connection between Kopaka and Kohlberger that's completely innocent on Kohlberger's behalf?
I know other people. You know? There were other people there under very, very suspicious circumstances, such as the Dahl boys, you know, Tez Dahl and Rosendahl. I'd like to know how many brothers they have.
The Steve Gonclaves has 3 brothers.
Yeah, I'd like to look into them. Steve, those guys, don't even get me started on them. I mean, they can solve it. I'm just going to leave that alone. But
yeah, that's why I leave the Brent thing alone. I you know.
But going back to what I was saying about, like, we know certain things about them from 10 p.m. all the way until 2 p.m.
2:10 a.m. 2:10 a.m. when the last call is made by Dylan to the driver, right?
Yeah. So we know. So how is it that you have 2 people? I only focus on the 2 because there's just way too much unknown about, you know, Xana and Ethan. I mean, I can't even begin to know how to look into that. But Kaylee and Maddie, they're like literally with people that they know, like the whole time. Like even during and after, there's people they know in the house with them. And I just can't see how they can be literally 0 time without someone they know being in the room with them, or in the house, like in the bar with them, or at the grub truck with them. You know, I'm in the car riding with them. There's always, like, every second there was somebody there who knows them, and even in the house, and even after they're deceased, the people are still there, and even more people are there who know them. It's just like, so you're telling me somehow somebody found a way to find that 1 hour and a half when they were not within 5 feet of somebody who knew them, you know.
Or in
My
contact
point
with somebody. No, I understand what you're saying.
Exactly.
Suddenly there's a
Yeah,
dead
how
zone.
can nobody know what? Yeah, how can nobody know what happened? I mean, there's always somebody with them.
You know, it almost sounds to me like somebody used that phone and ordered food while they were cleaning up the house. Talk about brass
Yeah,
balls,
yeah.
right? They used
Yeah.
Zana's phone
Oh, yeah.
to order some food while they were cleaning the house.
They're probably all sitting there at the table having some food.
I just find, the crime scene is described. The fact that there isn't, the rest of the DNA doesn't get the same scrutiny as Brian's, and to suggest that the blood on the knife sheet that's male, that deserves more scrutiny than the transfer DNA. Just that particular piece of DNA itself. How about gloves? Cletus made a good point. It's not just the blood on the gloves. The interior of those gloves had to be full of transfer DNA. Why wasn't that scrutinized? Where's the mention of the gloves being swabbed on the inside, the interior of the glove itself? They would be loaded with transfer DNA from whoever wore it. And does that match the blood on it? There's just so much that's not done. And I think this is where the case gets lost for the prosecution. I honestly think a jury is going to be confused when it comes to all of this DNA, and only one person's was tested. And it's another thing. If it's a brass, and I think this is what Ann has been trying to lead it to. If it's a brass snap, DNA cannot exist on brass at all. It molecularly destroys it, just like copper destroys algae. Copper destroys bacteria. Brass destroys DNA. And so you can't have a knife sheath if it's a brass snap and 48 hours later test and find a sample that's viable. It's not possible. It's scientifically impossible. That's why gun casings are never swabbed for DNA. They don't even swab them. They do fingerprint checks on gun casings because they're brass. You see, and I think Ann is trying. I think she's actually got it set up that if it's brass, she's cornered them on this.
Oh, well, hopefully.
It seems to me that
sometimes when I listen to her, I don't know what she's doing.
I think she's doing a fair enough job, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't know. I look at like the Luigi's lawyer, Dickey, Thomas Dickey.
No. Who's lawyer?
Luigi Mangione.
I haven't seen that case at all. No.
Oh my God! Well, I mean the whole case. I'm not going to pursue, but this real Nathan Daly, I think his name is. Whoever they have a breakdown of his lawyer's his motions. Why he's saying what he's saying is wrong with the beginning of the case, and it's all broken down in it step by step, and it makes perfect sense. The clarity is just amazing, and when I look at that compared to what Ann does,
yeah,
I just sometimes, I gotta wonder, like little things. Like some people would disagree with me, but like she keeps calling it touch DNA. I would never call it touch.
Neither would I. They filed a motion to make sure the prosecution doesn't use that term. I don't know if you saw that.
Use it all the time.
And I agree that she should have always been pushing transfer DNA. And the sadness to that is that people don't realize 70 to 80% of the dust in their house is their own dead skin cells, which is transfer DNA. That's how prevalent it is. It's everywhere. You lose 5 billion skin cells a day. That's like 5,000 skin cells every minute. It's insane. And that's what's on that knife sheath. And how would that survive on a brass snap? It wouldn't.
It isn't like people think. Like a lot of people wouldn't know that it's difficult to get fingerprints off of a gun. A lot of people think
because of the oils that are on there. You're right.
Yeah, the oils and the way it's formed, just the contours.
You're right. It definitely is. A lot of people don't realize that finding a gun with a fingerprint on it at a crime scene is circumstantial evidence. Finding DNA in a crime scene is circumstantial evidence because it can't tell you when that particular fingerprint and or DNA was put on that object. And it only becomes direct evidence when circumstances support your presence at that crime scene. And that's what's missing in this case. That DNA is circumstantial evidence. that Brian had some near contact or some transfer of his DNA ended up on that sheet isn't really even relevant. The bottom line is it only becomes real evidence when you could show A, B, C, D, and E and place him at that house with A, B, C, D, and E unquestionably. Now the DNA becomes relevant. But in and of itself alone, it is not in any way, shape, or form anything more than circumstantial evidence. And I think people struggle with that understanding. They don't see it that way. They think the DNA is everything. Go ahead.
Yeah, here I'll give you. I'll stretch a little bit. I sometimes think that. So these people who are doing the cover up and probably involved in the crime, they're very experienced with this. I mean, yeah, the hornet's nest that these people were living in 1122. I mean, it's just it's terrible. You know, they're just surrounded by basically organized crime in different times. I think that one of the reasons they're using Brian he's not. I mean, this is a stretch. You don't have to agree at all, but he's not just like a Patsy fall guy or whatever. But they're using him for a proxy. Like they need to clean up the scene, but these days you also need to clean up things like phone records and stuff like that. You know.
Well, you want for people to understand what a proxy is. The biggest example of a proxy is what you're seeing happen in American politics. Justin Trudeau is a proxy for crime cartels and crime cartels connected to both China and South America. You never heard of the amount of fentanyl coming across our border until Biden got in there and Trudeau hooked up with the Chinese and the South Americans. Trudeau is the problem, not the Canadian people, not even the products that they sell us with 300% tariffs on. That really isn't our problem. Same thing in Eastern Europe with the Ukrainian war. The proxies are the leaders of the Western countries. It's not Russia. Russia didn't start that war. The United Nations started that war. Not the NATO started that war. The United States couped that government. And the proxies are the Western leaders. And what a lot of Americans don't understand is the reason Trump is doing what he's doing is he's trying to get these people to collapse under the crime cartel pressure that they're under or submitted to willingly. And he's trying to destroy that structure. And so, unfortunately, we, the people, and the people of Europe and the people of other Western nations are going to have some financial suffering over the next few years because you have to eradicate the crime cartels that control these particular things. Imagine having 1 million non-governmental organizations getting billions and billions and billions of taxpayer dollars to convince you that you're not a man or a woman. And that's what these are important. The morale and the dignity of the country has been being destroyed. Look at this one thing where they're doing with women and girls, where they're putting them on that OnlyFans and they're sexualized the whole country. Everything become about sex. 67 genders was truly 65 perversions in man and woman. That's what it turned out to be. And it was always that way. And it's that element. And the only way to destroy that element is to shut them off from taking money out of America. That's why Trump is doing what he's doing. It's not that I'm a big fan of the guy or I think he's the savior of the world, but I do see what he's doing. Like these courts that keep coming. Imagine a court telling you that an illegal immigrant should be returned to the country. A rapist, murderer, took over apartment complexes in Arizona. It's the worst gang from South America. And the judge is going to rule in favor of bringing them back. Those are the proxies that need to be destroyed and replaced. So the Trudeaus of the world, the leaders in France, the leaders in Germany, the leaders in England, those countries, and they're intertwining with the crime cartels, the sex trafficking. Slavery has never been at a greater number than it is now. And he should really come out and explain this to the public, but he's in a very, very tricky position. And I think he's got nothing to lose and everything to lose if he doesn't do what he's doing. He's got to dig these people out of our government, the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the Army. He's got to dig these people out, and he's got to get foreign leaders to capitulate. If France can't sell its wine here, France is fucked if it can't sell its wine here. So is Canada. If Canada can't sell its car parts.
France has always been fucked without us.
Right. Well, all of these countries are, and it's not that he doesn't have a problem with the citizens, but their leadership, like our leadership, has been compromised, and they need to be removed. Those people need to do it on their own, and the only power we have as a country is to prevent them from making and stealing our money. And I think in that aspect, I support them 150% in doing that. Some of the other little things he may or may not do, I really don't pay much attention. It's the big issues, these proxies, as you use that word, the proxies. Kohlberger is a proxy. He was a convenient proxy. They wanted to solve this case because what a lot of Americans will not accept is every major learning institution is surrounded by drug cartels. That is their money. That's where it's like, where are you going to find a deck of cards? More likely in Las Vegas than anywhere else, right? Where are you going to sell your drugs? More likely in college campuses than anywhere else, right? And so that's what they don't want us to see. They don't want Americans to coalesce around the knowledge that you're sending your kid into a danger zone when you send them to a school.
Yeah, well, like with the at 1122 there. So I think there's even more covering up and cleaning up for the perpetrators than we already have seen and know of. And that's why I say Brian is the proxy, because with Brian, you know, they're going to wonder, well, is there any video of our guys who were protecting? So with Brian, it gives them an excuse to go look for video, and they can get rid of everything that points to the actual perpetrators. Same thing with the phone records. You know, they can't put their own person's name on a search warrant to get the AT&T dump. And why is most of the information missing? It's probably because a lot of it, you know, some of it would implicate their people. And same thing with the DNA. They use Brian to stir up this big smoke screen to bullshit everybody away from the blood DNA. And people are actually starting to stop talking about that now.
Yeah, and matter of fact, the people that swear he's guilty tell you that all these other samples of DNA are just because the house is full of a lot of people. Yet, how is it that Brian's doesn't have that same kind of reasoning? That's the reasoning that the people that said he was interested was saying, or was guilty, or the innocent people were saying, you know, how are they going to decide whose DNA is whose? That house has got thousands of people that went through it. But the way they did that is the way I said you do that, is you concentrate from the center of the crime scene and work your way out in a logical way. You had to come up and down the stairs. There's a likelihood you touched a railing. There's a likelihood there's evidence on the staircase itself, the landing, right? The path into the bedroom itself. And you work your way out, right? And so when they tell you that they found DNA on a pair of gloves that were outside, that they found it on the knife sheet, that they found 3 samples under one of the victim's fingernails, that they found it on a handrail between the second and first floor, those are relevant, important pieces of evidence.
Extremely, but you can't get any better than that. I mean, you know, as far as circumstantial evidence goes, it's high value. I mean, you know, DNA in the house, it's blood, that's suspicious. But the most suspicious thing of all is the fact that they don't pursue any of that. They literally have not pursued they have not pursued a single legitimate lead.
No, and the leads that they may have developed based on doing the crime, if they would have done their work the way that you would, and I've told this story 100 times. In Florida, a woman is killed in her garage, beaten to death. As the struggle takes place, a neighbor hears a high-pitched scream and it concerns her. So she takes her dog and goes for a walk. And where she thinks she may have heard the scream from, there's a car parked in the driveway of this home, a vehicle. And she takes a picture of the vehicle. And she continues about her walk. She hears nothing suspicious. She goes home. The next day, workers go to the house because this woman is never not at work. And they find this woman beaten to death in her garage and they call the police. When the police canvass the neighborhood, the woman shows the policeman a picture of an F-150 pickup truck with a license plate that connects it to the ex-husband. So what did the police do? They go to the court and they ask the court for an impound of the vehicle. Not an arrest of the husband, but an impound of the vehicle. Because the image that she gave them did, yes, show his truck, but it doesn't show him. They got the vehicle impounded, they put it in their lab, and they started stripping the interior of that truck, and they found multiple samples of blood from the wife in the truck, okay? Then they got a warrant to arrest the husband for murder. But you see, the process is what matters. The outcome will be whatever the outcome is based on the process. And if you aren't going to follow the process of justice, like they did in this particular case, they're definitely not doing that with Kohlberger. And that's why this case has appealed to me, because it's the process that makes or breaks it.
Yeah, that's the thing that appeals to me. Actually, no, honestly, I got drawn into it by the algorithm because I was watching that Apple River stabbing because I was interested in the self-defense part of it because I had an issue where I got into a situation where I had to defend myself, and I was trying to figure out and make sure I didn't say the wrong things,
Right.
as far as how it happened. And I wanted to know the law. So anyway, I'm watching that, and they come up with this Brian Cobra, and I was like, I thought that was over like a year ago, So I started looking into it, and then that was in May, and they had those hearings. And so I watched the hearing, and it was so obvious what they were doing with, Maury and Payne, and then Cy Ray talking about the missing data, and then and the way that they used the CASPIS software, which obviously they were cherry picking small percentages of the data from AT&T.
Right.
Until they got one that looked like they wanted it to look, and that's why they didn't save it, because it would have shown it like version 500.
Did you hear what Ann said? That even the PCA, the vehicle that they list in the PCA at 2:40 something in the morning that heads towards Moscow isn't Brian's car. His car left 2 minutes later. That car that belongs to Brian Kohlberger, admittedly, can be tracked by its phone. So the phone that they claim they use for pings to identify Brian's car is going south out of Washington State University. And the car that they say that the car that's in the PCA is the one that heads towards Moscow. Or what is it, Pullman? What I get them two towns fucked up, but it's heading towards the crime scene. The car headed towards the crime scene is not Brian. His phone verifies he went south when he left that college.
Yeah, I mean, it should be over. I mean,
she said
there's no evidence against him, and
no
evidence for him.
So it's missing 7 minutes, she calls it. And she said the most interesting thing about the interesting 7 minutes is the first 2 minutes are the identity of two white sedans that leave the college. One heads towards, is it Moscow, Idaho, right? And they both leave Pullman from that college, from that wherever he was living. One heads towards Moscow and one goes south towards Huawei Park. And they use the one that head towards Moscow and claim that that's Brian Kohlberger's car. And she says the phone clearly shows you that it went south. And yet they're using phone pings to identify that car as being Brian when it clearly cannot be Brian. And she says I believe that was intentional. So, yeah, they chose a car that places his car facing as if he's heading towards Moscow, and it's not even his car. And that car came out 2 minutes before Kohlberger's car came out. So there's so much fucked up here that it's just insane that these people that want to argue innocent or guilt don't know these details that make big statements.
And the landlord of the house where the murders took place, they have a 2013 white Hyundai Elantra, but the police said, well, that's not connected to the property. Okay, well, yeah, Team Idaho employee owns it, and before she bought it off of Dan. That's, not only that, but for like 20 years, a convicted pedophile, Scott Perky, convicted pedophile, had a business registered at that house, the murder house, and I'm just going to have to leave it to everybody to put two and two together when I say this. I hope people can get it. But he's a convicted pedophile, that's key. He had a business called Small World Software. It's importing and exporting, but it never did any business.
Really?
Yeah, Small World Software, importing and exporting. Okay, now I'm sure you understand what that means, but he's put that out there. That's a flag. That's a flag for doing business.
Well, everything around that house is shady, and that house didn't become a known drug house because the owner of the property didn't know. I've owned properties. Right. Believe me, I know what's going on. Matter of fact, I turned in one of my tenants for drug dealing, and they put and where I live, the cities will put points against your property for violations, and drug dealing from your property is a 3-point violation. If you get 10 points, they take your house. I said, well, then, why the fuck am I turning people in? Why turn them in, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but for the landlord not to know would be stunning to me that house. I mean, it's like the most common thing known in that town, what they were doing in that house.
That he has a real penchant for property near ports. near Waterport, Seaport. You know that Port of Lewiston is the farthest inland seaport on the west coast, 30 miles from Moscow. That's what the whole thing is built on. You had the grain cartels at first, okay, and the crop cartels, and then they took over that Port of Lewiston for shipping. Like 10% of everything grown in Idaho is shipped out that port, and then when that started growing, they built a university up there.
Yeah.
And when they built it in mind having with the Greek system in mind. The Greek system was controlling it.
Weren't they just arrested though in Pennsylvania and another state, Virginia, maybe that frat for drug dealing, drug trafficking?
Yeah, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many avenues in this case that could actually have a bearing on it, but there's been no investigation as far as we know, other than they decided it was Brian right in the beginning, and they stuck with that. And by no matter the consequences, and there will be none for the investigators, there will be none for the courts. But look at Brian. No matter what happens, he's nothing to them because there's other concerns that are larger than the individual, and that's why I say to people, it's you've got to pay attention to the process, not to the fucking argument of innocent or guilt, because that's the country right there. The process under which your officials operate are all that matters here.
Well, and then look at, there's three guys that were friends and it had to do with the frats. The one guy, Paul Katovich, you see his two kids are a little bit tied to this crime, Jack and Liz, and he started his career at the Port of Lewiston, and he worked his way up, making relationships through the Port of Lewiston, and now he's the CEO of Highline Grain Growers. What do you call it? Something, a co-op. I think they call it a co-op. But anyway, he was instrumental in getting a grant money for the University of Idaho from the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, for $55 million.
Wow.
So, yeah, and he's on the board of Sigma Chi. He's actually on the board. He's not just a member. He's on the board. And but also you have, you look at Scott Green. He's the only person in the world interested in buying this disaster of University of Phoenix.
Right.
I mean, everything in its metrics is all down. I mean, this is the dog, in marketing. You got a cash cow and then all the way down to a dog. But this is a dog. But he wants it, and I think the reason he wants it, he mentions this when he's talking about it. He says, and the funding we can get with it. Okay, so funding from the federal government, I'm sure a lot of it's based on the number of students you have. Well, if they can suddenly say they've got students all over, I mean, imagine that.
Yeah, it's all a numbers game when it comes to money. Everything is a numbers game, right?
That's the mess that this whole thing's happening with, and I think that's why. Obviously, we can't solve it. I don't know if we'll ever know who actually did it, but
no, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see the power of technology and these people telling you the context under which you're viewing a video or a picture. It's going to be interesting to see how many of the jurors are willing to accept the prosecution's context, because that's what our justice system has come down to. It's what our media has come down to. Entertainment has come down to that. And they wrap something in a context, and that's the lens through which you should view it.
yeah.
And that's oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
Oh.
So that's what it is. It's a game of context. Who can win the context debate? And it shouldn't be that. And I hope in her opening statement, I hope she covers that when she opens up, when she gives an opening statement. And in everything she says, the facts have to put him in that house. And none of the facts they have put him anywhere near the house. They actually, The day the PCA came out, my statement on Dago's show, when I got on his show back 2.5 years ago, was the PCA is his alibi. The very police that presented that data to the court is given the very information that shows he couldn't possibly have been at that house. And in the end, that's exactly what it's turning up to be. Right? Look at Cy Ray. Look at what he's saying.
The problem is it's going to be, though, there's 2 million citizens in Idaho that apparently don't give a shit about this.
Well, I think the problem is people just have accepted, you call it the undercurrent of stupidity. I think it's the undercurrent of willful ignorance. People just, and colleges are the big manipulator in this. They don't tell people how to think.
Willful ignorance is that's kind of what I'm saying, a different way of saying it. But yeah, willful ignorance is what they want. They want to be ignorant.
They've been taught that's what the schools teach you. A lot of people don't know what caused the Second World War. They literally think it was Hitler hating Jews. They don't know that the Jews started the war in Germany against Germany itself from within Germany. That nobody knows that. Because
ago, I asked a couple of young ladies, World War II, somehow it came up, and I said, what do you think, how many people do you think were killed in World War II, all together? And she said, they were like, they didn't know. I said, well, I'll tell you what, over under 1 million. And they took under.
Yeah, they don't know.
It's like 70 million.
The problem with people is you're not told how to think. And the thing is, history is full of information. And if people realize that, now don't get me wrong, there's no way Hitler should have done what he did with the Jews. But the Jewish businesses and the Jewish people started to boycott. In addition to the boycotts of German businesses, and then the fact that the World War I treaty prevented Germany from freely trading on the open sea. They had to pay a vig to all the Western countries, Europe, America, France, for World War I. They couldn't move their manufactured products around the globe freely. And that was another reason. That was one of the main reasons Hitler even did what he did, because of the Versailles Treaty. It so suffocated the German country, and nobody would negotiate their way out of it. So you got to place the blame of the starting of that war, not just on Hitler's shoulders, but on the Western European powers and America. So
and that's why all the people of Germany followed him and loved him.
Right. And people don't understand how could all of these people go along with that? And they didn't go along with all that. A lot of them didn't even know he was doing it. Right. Yeah. But the concept of breaking free from a treaty, from a war that subjugated the German people, took away their territory, took away farmland, took away industrial areas, prevented their goods from moving to the open market. You couldn't cross the open sea without having to pay a vig to Britain or America or France or the other countries involved. So that was the main force behind all of this. And that's what caused him to move out into violence. And if the other, like the same things happen in Ukraine, a lot of Americans are just too ignorant to read. They don't read. The war started in 2014 under Obama. We cooed out the leadership and put a Western NATO-loving fucking leader in there, that little comedian guy that was a stripper. This guy was no politician. And there's actual documents from the State Department that Vladimir Klitschko, one of the Klitschko brothers, who are two famous, well-renowned boxers, wanted to become president of the Ukraine, and they blocked him. Victoria Nuland and our State Department prevented that, and they put this jerk off in. And then this guy decided he was going to join NATO, and what happened was the regions, the Donbass and another region that borders Russia, are 98% Russian, ethnic Russian-speaking people. They voted to separate from Ukraine. And Ukraine has been shelling them since 2014. And then when Trump got in, Russia was going to invade, he stopped it. But the shelling continued. So Russia sent in its peacekeeping force. That's how this started. The reason he took Crimea was because NATO convinced all of the nations that bordered the Black Sea and all of the naval bases that Russia not only built, but released to these nations and leased them, they all closed access to Russia. They banned Russia from bringing their ships into their naval ports. Ports Russia built. Ports Russia gifted back to them, rightfully so, when the wall came down. Now NATO convinces them not to lease the... Imagine someone denying us Canada, telling us we can't go on the Great Lakes. What would we do? Literally, what would we do, right?
Yeah, Good luck with that.
So my point is, Americans are told because the context is fed to them, whether it be on the internet or it be online. So many people on the internet are blame Putin for invading Ukraine, and that is absolutely wrong. That's not what happened. And so that message gets drowned out. But a lot of people in Trump's administration are finally sharing and telling people this is not how the war started. And there's documents, there's thousands and thousands of documents to support this. They called it, you could just look it up, 2014 Obama's war. That's what it was named when he started when he couped out the government. The whole Ukrainian impeachment against Trump was to support that. The whole Russia narrative was invented to protect what they did, to try to keep Ukraine within the sphere of the Western Hemisphere. It's a fucking mess. The context is wrong. But so many Americans accept the context because they're unwilling to think. It's almost like you got to be crazy to think. I don't know.
Well, no, that's true though. But like if you look at some of the philosophers like Schopenhauer and others, they point out that smart people are shunned. Smart people don't.
Look what they did to all the doctors when all of that stuff started going around. And the doctors, listen, I don't need to be a genius, but when the fucking directions on the box of the mask that you're telling me to wear says does not protect against coronavirus, I don't know who to believe. Do you got to believe the guy that made it and put that on the box? You're a politician, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. They put warnings on cigarettes. I ignore them. I'll grant you that, but those warnings are real. I'm sure that this causes cancer, and I'm sure it does. Some of us choose to ignore that, but you can't make me smoke, right? And the irony is, one of the best things to intercept that virus is nicotine. People don't realize there's nicotine in tomatoes. Did you know that?
No.
There's nicotine in a lot of the plants that people are telling you are good for you to eat, but it's that nicotine that interacts with the same access to the cell that particular thing would enter through, and nicotine wouldn't let it in. Smokers had a high rate of protection against that.
It's like Narcan. It's like Narcan for fentanyl.
Yes, yeah, there you go. So you're a smart guy, you get it. But could you tell anybody that? I got banned on all kinds of platforms. They were banning me left and right.
They'll never talk to me again if I.
That's why I don't want to mention the particular illness, because their algorithm will come in and shut the stream down, boot me out of here. Right?
I mean, that's another thing right there. The fact that we can't have freedom of speech on YouTube.
No, and the thing is, a lot of people like, and I've been saying this for years. Even AI is not AI; it's just algorithms. There's no intelligence in these machines. When you go to the Grok one, like I broke Elon's Grok. I sent it in a repetitive loop by discussing gravity.
I remember that. I remember when that.
Right. It tells you that as far as the information available to me as of February 25th, 2025. So if you interact with an AI, you'll start to see that it is extraordinarily well-written algorithms. But that isn't intelligence, because the person writing the algorithm is the one that's going to direct you to whatever answer they want you to have. You see? So it's not an independent source of intelligence. What it is, it's like what did they used to have? The card catalog at the library? On automation. That's all it is. Real artificial intelligence will come to be when they could get quantum computers to work. And that's
going to be a problem, I think.
Well, the problem with quantum computers, just so you know, if the machine is anywhere near a sound source or any kind of resonance, it won't work. It'll shoot errors. That's the problem they're having. A quantum computer has an error in every 1,000 iterations. These computers have an error in every trillion iterations. You see? Wow. And they need to get the quantum computing. They need to find a way for the system to work with only an error every trillion or 10 trillion or 100 trillion times. So that's the problem with quantum computing is not only its low temperature that it needs to be kept at, but any resonance will fuck up its calculations and its operations.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get away from resonance. I mean, that's been an issue in electronics from the beginning.
It's even more so when it comes to the quantum computing, where they're splitting, they're using bits.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Did you ever see that bridge? I think it was in California. There's that
Yeah.
concrete bridge. It started twisting and stuff because the wind, when it passed under the bridge, it had the same resonance frequency as
Yeah, anything at 40 miles an hour, the winds at 40 would cause a resonance frequency in the bridge, and it actually fell. The Verrazano Bridge, what was it? I know that now I'm going to go. I think it was the Verrazano Bridge, but I'm probably calling it the wrong name. You know who might know is Carl or a guy Thomas that comes in here. So some pretty. Yeah. And listen, how do you prove Brian was in or around that house? He was not. And that's the crux of the case. That's the crux of the case.
In terms of the court case and the law, he's not guilty right now. There's nothing that shows him guilty. In reality, I don't know. You know, as far as the process of a trial, he's not guilty. I mean, there's just nothing there.
I agree 100%. There is no evidence to put him at that house. It is called, here's what it's called. It's called the Verrazano. So I was close. Verrazano Bridge collapse.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where it was. You say it was in California. I thought it was in the Northeast, but I don't know.
No, you're probably right. This is a long ago for me, decades ago. But I remember that one. Yeah, I don't know where it was at.
Yeah, did you see the images of that little Elon's kid following Trump around?
What happened?
Elon's son, his youngest son, X, he named him.
Uh-huh.
He can only be 3 or 4, and he just chases Trump around everywhere he goes. Trump walked out to the helicopter to go to Florida for a couple of days off, and that little boy is dancing and jumping and following Trump around. And then there's another video of the kid. Elon says, "What do you want me to do?" And the kid says, "Help Trump." Help Trump do what? Save America. Oh, fuck. That's another guy. Everybody that was on his side, that's the funny thing. If you all of a sudden start pointing out common sense, you become the most hated person from the opposite side. Mm-hmm. And I understand common sense. I understand that abortion is always going to exist, but I also suggest that there should be a logic or a common sense applied to it. I don't want the mother harmed, right? How about if of all these years of abortion, they pushed all these years that they've been pushing it and using it since 73, adoption? What if adoption were the alternative, pushed alongside or as strong as they pushed abortion? Which would have been a more common sense and more acceptable over the long run? You wouldn't be importing all these people. You'd have minimum of 26 million black people in America alive today that have been aborted since 1973. You wouldn't need 21 million illegals, would you? So, you know, the problem with common sense is that it's not applied to these issues. They convince people of a context. And birth control, because you threw your feet in the air and got banged by a guy that wasn't protected, you're both idiots. And that you destroy a life. I don't think that that's an equitable solution to having sex. It's not logical.
Well, I always thought that the government should offer people, you know, like $5,000 or whatever it takes, 10 grand if that's what you want, to get sterilized. And then,
well, they got the morning after pill, so we're so far ahead now with science that's fair enough. Now
you can't always get them to take that.
Pardon? No, but they should be offered free like Tic Tacs, right?
Oh yeah, the morning after pills, yeah, they're very expensive.
So now you're interrupting a biological process before it even becomes a biological being. Now, right? Yeah. So okay, but then there's other means and methods to prevent being pregnant. But to just women that are in here, you disagree with me, you could disagree all you want, but to use that as a form of birth control, it's just like I don't even know, man. So let's go. Brian did it. Shoot him in the head the minute he's accused. What are we waiting for? Why all of this hip-de-hoo-dah? Why is the rationale between abortion not applied to our criminal justice system? Nobody would accept that. And
I know, but we have the answers to this. The answer is that Idaho, the state of Idaho, is doing this for a very specific reason. They know what they're doing. It's their intention. You know, there's nothing random about this. That's the one thing that a lot of people don't care. Like I put it on posts online and people don't care. But you know, the odds of that house if you had somebody going in group, out group, the way it did,
Right.
it's 15-1. I mean, you got a 1 in 15 chance of that splitting that way.
I know.
Because, and that's not even, and that's I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and just using those 6, because really, there's another roommate, Ashland. There's another guy that seems to live there, Hunter Johnson. He's there. He's in every video. Seems like.
Right. He answered the door. Didn't he answer the door when the police showed up?
Yeah.
On one of those times, yeah. So there's always people. You're right. Always different people, men, people from the frat, always in and out of that house, or living in that house, or not living in that, back and forth, right? So
what are the odds that it happened to catch the only 4 people who are in bad standing with the fraternity are the ones that get whacked? Like,
yeah, and how is it that some guy that just lives 10 miles away, right? How is it that he get that, to me, I think the word bad luck, like, you've got that Benedict Arnold, it's for treason. I think Brian Koberger should be the term for bad luck, because you can't get any worse luck than this poor son of a bitch, right?
you got Koberger.
You got Kobergered, bro. You're right. I drag race a lot. That's what I'm going to say to people. I just Koberg your ass. You're unlucky. Well, your car broke. You're unlucky.
Yeah, I know I said this to you before, but I still think that Chief Jenkins, he was the chief of the Poland police and he's the one who interviewed Brian Koberger for the internship, and then he became a few months after that he became chief of police for the WSU, and so he knew Brian Koberger well. I mean, and they had an HR file on him. So, and then there's a video with one of the content creators, I wish I could think who it was, has a video where it shows that Chief Jenkins talking about going over with Chief Fry and helping them. So
well, did you see the hearing where Brian Koberger was identified early on, but then he was excluded?
I still haven't seen anything on that, but I've heard it once or twice. But
Brett Payne said this, that he believes his name was brought up, that he was named early on but excluded. But the funny thing is when you look at the dates, and the exclusion would have been, the only way to exclude him would have been on the year of the car. You see, because originally they were looking for an 11 or 13. And I'd like to see the image that FBI agent depended upon to determine the 11 to 13. Because I always said from the beginning that for people to think this guy made a mistake shows you just how stupid people are. To identify a car, I'm a car guy. And I'm telling you, the difference between a 70 and 71 Chevelle to somebody that knows cars is obvious. Now, to a normal individual, no, it wouldn't be. They're identical in your eye. So in other words, the FBI guy could not make the mistake. If he said 11 to 13, that's what the car was, because he saw the one uniqueness that separates it from all other years. If he would have came out and said a Honda Elantra between 11 and 20, that would have been, then you could say he's covering for an error because he don't know. But when he's that specific, you have to accept his identification, not just because he's a car guy, but he's specifically trained in it. And if you are a car person, the differences are subtle. It may be the placement of a marker light on the front grille. It may be a different shape of the headlights from square to round back in the day. Or in Koberger's case, the rear marker lights on the back of the car. They're either out at the corners, 14 to 16, or they're inside by the license plate, 11 to 13. Those were the only two. That's the only physical difference between those 4-year cars. So there's no way that FBI agent made a mistake. None. As a matter of fact, years into this, when confronted by them, that he said he stands soundly on the idea that it was 11 to 13. Very comfortable with his identification. So that's why they eliminated Koberger in the beginning. And it wasn't until after they announced to the public what they were looking for, somewhere around the middle of December, or maybe even the 19th, where they then included the 14 to 16. They went 11 to 16. And that was because the FBI agent was shown an image of another car that was a 14 to 16. So he didn't interpret the car around the house as being an 11 to 16. He interpreted two different images from two different videos on two different areas. You see?
Yeah.
So you can't put Koberger at the house. And that's always been my argument. It's always been an opinion. And an opinion shouldn't put a man to death, even if he did it. Sorry, but even if he did it, if you can't place him in the home, then you can't convict him.
Well, based on what we know, he didn't do it.
I don't know that he didn't do it. There's 1,000 ways I could show you how he did
No,
do it.
I'm saying based on what we know. I'm saying as far as the trial goes, you can't convict him on what we have. Now, I don't know if he did it or not.
I don't know either. Like I said, if I were Brett Payne, if I were those investigators, you know what I would have tried to do? I would have scoured video to show two Elantras in close proximity or a reasonable proximity to even think he traded cars or joined another vehicle, because they did ask for the occupant or occupants of an 11 to 13 Elantra to come forward because they may have seen something that could help the investigation. So I would have tried to connect Koberger's car in the proximity of a earlier year Elantra. That would be smart, right? That would be genius. And then
but I think they're at a different kind. They have a different kind of genius. And I don't know what exactly their game is.
It's called the media. Go ahead.
But I don't know. I mean, it seems like pursuing the DNA that they had and properly interrogating the people around that house that are there all the time, like, Bethany, Dylan, Hunter,
Right.
Emily, Dave, the team Idaho, they're as crooked as a barrel of snakes. Team Idaho Realty, they changed their name to something else, but with their small world software, because I guess there's a lot of businesses. Somebody has a video on this too. There's a lot of businesses in Moscow that use it that are not like public really, but they use names like Disney and Disney Princess. And so there's been code words that like the Brian Epstein crowd uses.
I don't know. I'm actually I'm thanking people for listening. I got 3 platforms I push this to.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead. I'm listening. Oh, there it is.
Oh no, that's just part of. I'm just sure that Team Idaho had some part in this, and that's why I think that's their 2013 Elantra. That PMG. I don't remember her last name, but it's nothing else. They were seen driving around there because they were in a panic over what happened, even if they didn't do it.
Here to me is the most relevant point about the car is the car's not relevant. There's no indication that any vehicle had anything to do with the entry into that property. This is what I said. When you look at the original crime scene, there's nothing to indicate an outsider entered the property. There's no proof of that anybody did, let alone Koberger. You can't even show that somebody came from the outside. So that's why the crime investigation should have began from within. And they shouldn't have let Dylan and Bethany go. They should have brought a woman police officer in, brought them to a doctor or a hospital. They should have really ran these women through the fucking net and really questioned them separately. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the transcripts, it was the policeman that brought up a bushy eyebrows, not her. And then you find out her whole room is covered. She's got some fetish for eyes and eyebrows, which is fine. I'm not judging her, but is when you do all of these ancillary pieces of information show reasonable doubt. Is it reasonable, right? I missed out. Everything that they showed us that they didn't release in the beginning. This is what I mean by how corrupt our system is. And it's not, I'm not even blaming Brett Payne or any of the individuals as being corrupt, but they've been trained to run an investigation in such a way that somewhere along the way, someone in the know enters a particular scenario into the heads of the investigators and then filters the information for an outcome. Right? And that's where you end up. And to connect Koberger to the house, please just do that. And then I'll sit confidently that this gentleman is not just a suspect, because I think he was a legitimate suspect. I don't argue with that. But they're they're closing the loop on this, though. It's just not there, and they're unable to.
I don't think they ever intended to convict him. I think this is the long, what do they call that? The long, it's like a long con or something. They're just letting all the evidence expire, like the records of phone companies and things like that. They only keep them just so long. And, you know, the videos, they let all the videos time lapse. You know, they didn't go out and get them right away. They know all that. Nobody's that stupid.
Yeah, you know,
like Brett Payton trying to say he doesn't know where Monday's machine is.
you know,
it's what? It's like
who was it?
I mean, it's a scrapyard. He's been there for 2 years as a cop. Every cop knows the scrapyard. I mean, you can't be a cop without understanding the scrapyard.
Well, and this particular thing too, that the FBI agent that last asked for phone records that went back to July or August of 2022, was looking for records on Dylan and I think Bethany because it may have shown their involvement in the crime. Now there's a woman that has that document that was it was put out there and then taken down, but she's got it. So again, there you go with all this information that's exculpatory or reasonable doubt was hidden from the public until just recently under this new judge, which doesn't make him a superstar. It just why Judge allowed all these documents to be sealed is just beyond me. I don't.
It was just stretching this out.
And the narrative of stalking, right? The narrative of stalking, the narrative he did it, the narrative of this, that, like she's filing.
They know what they're,
go ahead.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. I mean, they're not stupid. They know they let things out at the right time, you know. And like everyone, like I said, that first judge, she had her role in the whole thing, and then Judge, he had his role, and now they've got Hippler, and you know.
See, I said this before. Look at that first warrant should never have been signed for an arrest. That warrant should have been signed for. Here's what that warrant should have produced. It should have produced a suspicion supported by ancillary information that needs to be confirmed. You've identified the individual. You have his phone number. You have images. You need to now solidify that. And why don't you surreptitiously go pick up his DNA? Right? You got a place of where he works. You could get it off the door handle of his apartment, the door handle of his car. You can ask him to come in and donate a sample. You can question him. I would have gone through that before I would have charged him. But they didn't do that. They applied for an arrest warrant for a quadruple homicide on things that we now see the dots don't connect.
Well, this is part of why they changed judges. It's layering. It's like money laundering. They're burying that PCA, you know, to do anything with that PCA now, you know, it's going to be a lot of work. Nobody's going to do it. They got a million ways to slow you down and stop you. It would take you 10 years.
Well, that bothers me with Hippler. If your accusations in the PCA aren't true. See, a lot of Americans are confused with probable causes. They think it's just a cop saying you did something. And that may be true in some instances, but when you're relying on information collected through electronic means or even verbal means or eyewitness means, it needs to be verified. So you can show an image of an Elantra, but that doesn't, how do you know that the judge should say, and how do we identify that to the accused? Phone pings. And how can I be sure that the phone pings correlate to being in that vehicle? Those are the questions the judge are supposed to ask, because probable cause to take somebody's freedom is a big deal.
Well, it's like the example you used with the pickup truck. You know,
right.
The woman who took the picture of the pickup truck. I mean, that was really, really smart because they didn't have anything on the ex-husband. All they had was a truck. Anybody could have drove that truck there.
Or he could have been there before the crime, after and left, and the crime occurred when he left.
Yeah, anything could have.
Right. I mean, there's reasonable doubt. There's always reasonable doubt when you don't have the fucking smoking gun. That's why I try to continue. That's why I say to people, guns. Look, my fingerprints were found on the hinges of a door that was removed, and someone entered the apartment and stole firearms. The person that did that was me.
Yeah.
Okay, I did it.
Yeah.
But I was the maintenance man, and I was painting that hallway on the very day that this happened. So my fingerprints has a reasonable expectation to be all over the place there. In fact, they were. So how do you then indict me for robbery? You don't find the guns. I don't got the guns. You question me. I didn't do it. They couldn't indict me. And the case got dropped. I literally robbed the apartment. And that's what I mean by probable cause, folks, is you have to have a smoking gun, or at least something an average individual would say, yeah, that fucker did it. And you could still be wrong. But that piece of information has to be fairly conclusive in the eyes of the law. And there's nothing in the probable cause affidavit that can be made conclusive. My experience says criminals turn their phone off to mask their presence at a crime. But Koberger's not a criminal. As a judge, I would have said, well, what's his felony background? Well, doesn't have any.
Mm-hmm.
What's his arrest record? Doesn't have any. Then why are we assuming why are we treating him like a criminal? You see, these are honest questions a court is supposed to ask the officers. And it wasn't done here. And it's not done in many places around the country. That Florida case, in my own criminal experience, those are important cases for people to understand that the state needs more than just your gut feeling.
Yeah, and that's why I look at it as, I think the police knew exactly what they were doing, and you look at it, it's more than just an inside job. It's like it's got this case has home field advantage all the way through it.
Oh yeah,
and even look at the video we have, like the Linda Lane video.
Yep,
that comes from King Francettich, a friend of Scott Green. His son Sage worked for Team Idaho for a year.
Yeah, but what can I say though? Here, that really, I got off of true crime and left the internet for this shit for over a month over that, because I tried to tell the creators, I told them all it's a diversion, it's a distraction that has nothing to do with the case. Nothing. That video is the most worthless video of all. If anything, it shows nothing. And so far, there's really. Go ahead.
We only have video from Francettich and video from the police, the body cam. Why isn't there any video like this? Some neutral person.
Why isn't there a video of them entering the bedroom upstairs, Maddie's bedroom, where now we're being told by the defense that there is really no view of the knife sheath by two other officers that went in there? Now that's a problem. And the knife sheath was found. Listen, it was found on the second pass, as was the footprint, as was, I think, other samples of DNA. Why did it take a second pass? And who went through on the first pass? And what were they wearing? And what tools did they bring with them? And what the fuck were they doing there?
Yeah.
Right? Who the fuck? How do I mean,
they were investigators too. They would have seen it if it was there.
Well, it wasn't seen, I think, until Brett Payne arrived after 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and they did a second thing. But there's two other officers with body cams that went into that room or had associate, and there's nothing in the cam to show the knife sheath. Or it's suspicious whether the knife sheath is where they're claiming it, because maybe one cam shows it somewhere else. I don't know. Here it is.
That's why, I'd like to see video continuous.
Right. That's where all the terabytes of data comes from, I'm sure.
Yeah, from somebody who has nothing to do with any of these people.
Yep.
Just, and there should be lots of that. And there should be some video from the university. I mean, they've got, it's like the guy who called in, the guy who happened to see that the internet was turned off, who called in. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Criminal Mindholes has a good audio of that. But anyway, he was talking about how much technology the university had. He said people are going to find out how much technology they have, like, security cameras and stuff like that. But we've never seen anything. I mean, in Pullman, at WSU, they got a video of something, Brian's car or whatever. But nothing from, how does that happen right at campus there? And the university has no footage of anything.
And even if they got footage, it's useless in respect to the fact that the crime took place on a house on Queen Road, technically, not even King Road. That's Queen Road that house is on. You got to make a left off of King to get to Queen Road, to get to the Queen Road apartments, right? Unless they're saying that small piece in front of that house is King Road and it doesn't turn to Queen Road, which is possible until you get the. But everything these guys assembled, it does not place anybody from the outside entering that home. There's no mention of breaking and entering. There's how did he get into all of these bedrooms without having to force his way in?
I think the closest they get to video of suspicious vehicles is the West Taylor police body cam, where you see the black truck goes by and the white vehicle goes by,
Right.
and then they come back, they go west, and then in a little bit they go back east again.
But they're only suspicious because in the context we know there was a murder with a white vehicle, because they're telling us there was a white vehicle involved. From my perspective,
well because they were there around the time.
right,
You know,
right,
that's what they call it.
but I mean at that point, then you got to throw a net, and everybody's suspicious, and they didn't throw that net. They held that net back. My first suspicion would have fallen with the victims and the people that arrived the next day. All of those people would have been run through the gambit.
That case should have been solved in like 3 days. I mean, you just don't, you can't do that. Like, you know, you've been around the block, and I've been around the block, and I know for a fact, like there's no possible way I could do that. Or anybody I know, and I've known some heavyweights. You know what I'm saying? And they would never do it. Nobody. It's not. First of all, it's not professional. Maybe off the record. Now, it could be, Dylan's family basically through her boyfriend. They're people who could do that. But if they did it, I think it would be off the record. I don't think they would let their gang members or whatever know that they were doing it. It would, because like a gang, like a serious gang, would never sanction something like that.
I've had a lot of experience in my life, and the unfortunately a lot of it also was connected. We're going back 30 plus years now, connected to crime, and your biggest enemy in crime is yourself. Let me just say that anybody that's going to commit a murder does it all by itself without any other interference or any interaction with anybody is more likely to get off and not be convicted. The last thing you ever want to do in a criminal activity is be a part of some other people. That's your first mistake. So if you're going to commit a crime, I promise you, don't mention it. Think about it in your own head. Don't look up. Don't any connection to any of it anywhere electronically or with a friend or even a loved one. You never mention it. And you're going to commit a crime all by yourself. You're the most likely person to be successful and get away with it. But you fucked yourself. People don't know when to shut up. Look, and Brian Kohlberger did the right thing. He stood silent. He wouldn't even acknowledge the charges towards innocent or guilty.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how you're supposed to do it. And the guy's suffering in jail now for 2.5 years. And they're holding him up.
The only thing we've learned about him, we've learned that guy has an immense amount of self-control.
Dude, believe me, the public would know my position by now long ago. They would keep me in a room with a TV monitor. They wouldn't let me in the courtroom if that were me. And not because I'd be violent. It'd be because I'd be spouting common sense. Fucking twits. Look at the GPS on my phone. It shows you where I was, Your Honor. These people are lying. I wouldn't sit still. I don't know anybody that could do what that kid's doing.
No, I know.
And that could weigh for him or against him, right? I mean, you could look at it from either perspective. He's got the patience of.
He's just going to lose his temper and go to some stranger's house, and somehow get away with that. I mean, you can't, and people are held accountable. That's the one thing people don't understand about, these gangs, cartels or like the Aryan Brotherhood. It's like when you're a leader in that, when you're one of the leaders, you're more likely to get whacked than anybody else. If you can't make a mistake. Like, you don't just get that title and keep it, forever. You gotta earn it every day, and you don't earn anything by sanctioning something. What happened in 11/22?
Mm-hmm.
Like whoever would have done that, they would have been disappeared the next day. Like because they're going to get caught. There's a high chance they're going to get caught, and then they're going to turn all you in and the whole gang in, to get their sentence down. I mean, people just don't do that, but they might do it off the record, you know,
Well,
they were mad, and you know, I mean,
you know, it used to be a debate as to whether somebody could accomplish this, and I'm not so sure that the time allotted is fair, and the constraints that the state put on itself is their problem. I'm not so sure that doing what was done that night is capable in just a few minutes. And I don't also really accept the fact that the argument that it was an individual that did this. It's just in that particular house in a college town with that many victims, and the statement from one of the survivors that he looked right at me and kept going, and the police saying it was targeted. To me, there's something that connects those 4 victims, or the guy came in through the sliding doors, they allege, and thought he was on the first floor because he walked into a kitchen. How many second floor kitchens are in this country? Almost none. So I could see somebody coming in with the intent to get Xana and Ethan and going upstairs, and now he's in a jackpot. He's got to take these 2 out, and then he finally goes downstairs to the other room. But even that makes no sense. In other words, this crime is so outrageous that to just wrap it up as to just one guy did it and did all of this and left no evidence except transfer DNA and a knife sheath. Meanwhile, I'm going to ignore the 6 other samples. It's just the odds of it going down the way they said just don't match. It's the odds are greater than the odds they claim of a DNA match.
yeah, I would say there are experienced people out there who've done, you know, a lot of one-on-ones and stuff like that. You know, and they could do it, but it would take a little bit more time than that, and they couldn't do it without the other 2 knowing they did it. Like,
can I say what I think happened here?
yeah.
And I heard what Clue said earlier, but I honestly think that there was never an intent for any murdering here. I think what happened was it was all from inside the home, that it was jealous rage, but it wasn't jealous rage with the intent to kill. That jealous rage walked up to the second floor to confront the people they were raging about. That knife was on the 3rd floor in the possession of one of the victims and snatched from them. Or it may have been brought up not to kill, but to threaten. And that then ensued. And during the ensuement of that, we were being told about people that went upstairs and then downstairs by Dylan. I think that's when Xana, unfortunately, confronted the person or came in contact with the person and fled to her bedroom. And the person followed him in there and ended up killing the 2 young people on the 2nd floor.
It's always carried one.
A judge. That I think that arguable that something like this could have happened and some unknown stranger wanders in.
The person who went up there who was mad, there's somebody who just normally carries a weapon, you know, because maybe they're like a avid hunter or something.
I don't think that it came from outside the property is my point. I think that
No.
knife was a part of the home. Did anything, but I am saying that if you wanted to make a case for one potential scenario, which is what you should do as an investigator, you have to have potential scenarios that you can close loops on, and you may need 10 loops and only close 4, so you need to move on to a new suspect. And with Koberger, it seems to me that if they were playing it straight, that with Kohlberger's car not being verifiably not being identified as being at that scene, then they needed to find another way to place him there. Because I'm not saying he didn't do it either, right? So how else did he get there? Did he park his car somewhere? Did he jog? Did he walk? There's a parking lot 850 feet away from that house that a car could have been placed, and you could have walked over and did this crime. You didn't have to park in the back lot.
I think everybody knows who did it. I think, in all honesty, it was just like you just said. It was someone from that, the inner circle, just like people said from the beginning. And that person was mad at them for some reason, went up and confronted them, and from there it all went south.
Right.
And that's why Bethany and Dylan don't want to tell on them.
That's another more plausible thing. Right.
Yeah, maybe they've been friends with this guy from high school. Who knows? Who
knows who the guy is? He could have been. We don't know, but I just find it difficult to view I have to see some evidence that somebody entered the home unlawfully. There has to be some show of that. Not this idea that you just accept he came in through the sliding glass door. I don't accept that.
That's the weakest part of the whole thing. Did any stranger, anybody nothing to do with that house, could go in there and do that? That's like the weakest. That's the weakest, and nobody. I can't see it. A stranger.
Not only that. Listen, take this into account, and I'm telling you, it matters if you're trying to do this. Do you take a gun to a crime with the bullets in your pocket? Why would you enter a home with a K-bar knife in its sheath, but not attached to your belt? And then with it in its sheath, you illegally enter the home and then make your way upstairs to kill people and leave the sheath behind. You see, that's why I say I can't get past the idea that knife is part of the home, not part of the intrusion, because I don't see an intrusion being a part of the crime. I don't accept any car being part of the crime. And if a car is a part of the crime, I don't suspect it was one that drove and parked by that house. You see? So I just, and they never really investigated anything. They just came to a conclusion and did everything they can to try to wrap the information they had around the individual they decided did it. And again, they might have the right guy, but I think if there was one way he couldn't have done it, they're the ones that are arguing the way he couldn't have done it, because their evidence doesn't bring them into that circle of events.
Yeah, I think, I think that people have known and people have touched on probably what happened, and it would make sense. I've heard some scenarios that make sense to me, and it's just the person who did, there's only one person in everyone we've seen. If it's somebody from the inner group who could do it, that I think could do it, or at least I'll put it this way: if I had to go into a battle, there's only one person in that whole crowd that I would want with me. Okay, and it's very suspicious the fact that he's all part of their night, and then he's never sitting there again.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing goes bad. And I think some of the vehicles surrounding the house, like the black truck and the white car, I think those could be people associated with like Bethany and Dylan, trying to just get them out of there, or try to figure out what to do or whatever. I don't know.
And I honestly think that there's things were happening before. I'd like to see the texts and the phone from all of the people from 11 p.m. on the 21st until noon the following day, of all of them, those that were deceased, and all their friends should be included, but especially Dylan and Bethany's phone. She goes silent from 2:10 a.m. until 4 a.m. or somewhere after 4:24 or something. So
yeah,
it seems to me that she becomes cognizant of issues, but at a time after they allege the crime took place. It seems to me her texts, though, are consistent with the crime taking place then. And when Ann pointed out that the dog didn't start barking until 4:25 a.m. and continued to bark for up to a half an hour, that brings it almost to 5 a.m. So did the crime happen between 4 and 4:20, or did it happen from 4:24 to 4:50? And Ann has given us information to make me think that the timeline of these texts from these girls appears to be during the time of the crime, but the police say the crime ended at 4:20. That's when the car pulled away. I don't care if they say 25 or 30 now. They said the car sped off at 4:20 a.m. So when did the crime start?
Yeah, I mean, these two were there, and they were awake almost the whole time. And
Couldn't you?
like I said, it's hard for me to believe that people who are surrounded by people they know, that this happens to them and nobody knows who did it.
Another question. Were all of these young victims' phones turned off? Their ringers weren't there? You couldn't call these bedrooms and hear a phone ring? I mean, if the phone is there, you have to assume your roommate is there. So if you call Zana and you call Ethan and you call Maddie and you call Bethany and their phones all ring, but nobody answers, you don't go knock on their door? There's so many inconsistencies.
No, there's only two things anybody's going to do. Either they're going to flee the house and call 911 and let them go in and see, if there's anybody in there, or they're going to go knock on doors, and talk to their roommates. One of the two.
And so here's why I disagree with Clues saying she heard, even if she heard Bethany say what she said. The thing that disturbs me the most is that if you were both aware of some calamity, how is it neither one of you made an attempt or together when the sun shone and the sunlight is up, that you didn't make an attempt to go to these rooms yourselves? That's very suspicious to me. I don't care how scared you were or what you heard. We're talking 7:30 in the morning, 6:30, 8:30. You didn't attempt to go to either one of these rooms and try to rouse your roommates? That's very suspicious to me. So what that says to me as an individual is they knew. They had knowledge of what they would find there, and they didn't want to confront it. You can't explain that the fact that there's no argument we went to their rooms. Where's the statement we went to their rooms and they were locked? We knocked on the door and nobody answered. Where is that? Nowhere that we can see. Is it there? I'm not sure that it is. And I think this is one of the reasons why they hid all of this from us for all this time, because these are just a couple of questions that you'd want to apply to the roommates that didn't get killed. There's a lot of things they didn't do that make no sense.
I mean, I'm at home. I live by myself, and there's not even other people there. So if I woke up at 4 a.m. and saw somebody walking out of my house, first thing I'm doing, I'm arming myself, and the second thing I'm doing is getting out of there and calling 911.
Dude, I'd have closed that door and climbed out of my bedroom window if I had to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would have done something, and you've got to. I mean, these kids also. Let's not forget they lived their entire life on that phone. But everything you saw was so terrifying. You went and huddled with your girlfriend downstairs, but neither one of you had the place of mind to investigate or call for help. That can't be explained by fear, because the only way to overcome fear is with your phone. You call 911.
They're trying to say that they just sat there waiting, hoping that guy didn't kick their door in.
And there was blood from the second to the first floor. That's why I say, how did that get there? Was that deposited by the perp, or was it transferred from Dylan? It's a unknown male DNA. Whose is it? Why is that person still unknown? And they made the same argument in court that a lot of the guys that insist he's innocent are making. Now the guilters are making it. Well, it could have been there for a long time. Well, so could Brian's transfer DNA. Yeah, it's just, and imagine the amount of transfer DNA in those gloves. That had to be the most salient piece of information, and we don't have it.
Did you know that one of the guys in their circle, he ended up getting arrested for something after that in Boise? That he had said that sometimes when he's drinking, he has an alternate personality, an alter personality, and
No,
he had a name for him.
no.
Yeah, he had a name for him, and
In this case,
he was he's one of the main guys that people think did it, but
oh,
his family's highly connected in the legal structure of that state. They're the ones who their lawyer went over to see Steve Gonsalves and handed him the order to stop talking about him.
okay. I don't know who that is. I don't remember, but to me, I think that the place to concentrate anything, if you're going to allege or even assume or try to close a circle that somebody's involved, to me, they have to be part of the legal documentation, or it's not. It's a slippery slope, because anybody could have done this, including Brian Kohlberger, right? And we already know who the main players are. There were two main players in that home, and they never got looked at. And that to me, when you try to close the loop and understanding their behavior, it doesn't line up with innocence. You can't explain that behavior by fear, because you don't live in 1800 with no phone. You are admittedly using your phone to communicate something to another roommate, and you're both apparently on the same page of some calamity happening, and yet neither one of you take any action. So how can you tell me you didn't have some prior or existing knowledge of what that might be and who it might be? I just have a hard time swallowing that pill.
Oh yeah, it can't. Yeah, that pill can't be swallowed. I mean, but they, Bethany and Dylan. I mean, it would make sense if it's somebody in their circle, or that it would make sense that the police. That could be a person that the police don't want to be arrested for that.
Listen, I accept the fact that these two young women, one or both, may have had some idea that there was a problem, but they could never imagine that it went to the levels it went to. In other words, it could have been a dispute over a few dollars or something, or you kissed my girl, or you slept with my, let's just say a normal everyday problem that they were aware could come to a head. When and how, they had no idea. But then when it came to a head, it was so fucking awful what they would have expected that I could see them being scared. This, you know what I mean? But to me, they would have had knowledge, not that people were going to be killed like that, but knowledge of the group or the person or people that had an issue to address with these four people, these four victims.
This issue started months before.
Yes.
Before that.
Who was it that said they had documentation that went back to August about Bethany and Dylan? And the FBI guy was looking for their phone records back in July or August of 22, because he thought that there may be information and they're connecting them to the crime.
Yeah. And there probably is. I mean, there was some kind of dispute. It was bad enough that Kaylee moved out. And,
well, look at the screen count. Maybe they thought Kaylee and Jack were fussing and fighting. That's normal. That's fine. But that would have been a normal event that they would have then approached these bedrooms. What they heard kept them completely away from the crime scenes. So whatever was happening in that house, this is why I think it supports Bethany vanishing and not wanting anything to do with shit. And it supports, Dylan. Dylan may have seen pieces of what she saw. But she may have seen what she's seen, connected that to all the hubbub that she heard, and realized that whatever issues that were in that household went way beyond any of her fucking even her wildest nightmare. Right?
Yeah.
That's why she's probably saying that. Maybe it was a dispute of jealousy or something. And it went way beyond where it was supposed to go. And that's why she's trying to bring up these dreams, because this shouldn't have gone that far. And so that's what I mean. She may in fact know the perpetrator, or know of, or have a name of, and she just is terrified and doesn't want to say anything. I could buy that with her behavior.
Well, maybe because she knows the police, that the judicial system is going to be on that person's side. And
could be somebody like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even knowing, I think that they were, it's possible that they were it was so violent and so vicious and so beyond anything they could have ever dreamed of that frozen shock phase may be that they were terrified to take any action at all for fear of their own lives. I don't, maybe when she said she saw him, maybe something was said to her. The statement, I'm here to help.
Actually, if they knew the person, then everything makes more sense with what they're doing after. Because
yes,
you know, like I know, if you see something like that, that's a bad situation because people, there's an old saying that there's two kinds of criminals: those in prison and those who don't leave witnesses.
And let's just say this: when the name Brian Kohlberger was given to Dylan, and when she heard it in the news and she went and looked it up and didn't recognize him, she probably already had an idea of who it was. And that may be, in fact, why she's acting the way she's acting and why Bethany is avoiding everything and staying out of the limelight. In other words, they may know who did this crime, not because they were directly involved, but because they understood of an underlying issue, and this went way too far. And so they don't want to have any part of it. Just get me out of here, man. I ain't seen
that's
shit.
Why they weren't hurt because, the person
didn't need to hurt
him. Didn't have a beef with them.
Well, no, he didn't need to hurt him. I think enough said, right? Sometime enough said. There's 4 dead roommates here. Go ahead and accuse me.
Yeah. Next. Yeah.
Right? I mean, so in that context, you can then try to put that you can then reasonably accept this facts as they've been shared to us. And it does give an explanation to these 2 young girls' behavior. Yeah. Without having them involved in the crime at all. But
there's one thing I've always thought about Dylan. People don't really talk about it, but what I've always thought is, if she did invite Kaylee back, get her back there for the weekend, somebody talked her into doing it, and I think they didn't. I mean, they didn't say anything about, what ended up happening, and but I think it's possible that somebody did talk her into getting Kaylee back there for the weekend.
Let's take that for what it is. She wanted her to be her number one at some thing, and that could be purely innocent. There are going to be coincidences that that appear to be connected and they're just completely not connected. I mean, depending on the scenario you're choosing, but I'm trying to understand both pro, innocent, and anti. And in other words, they knew or were involved or they had no idea. And this situation is so fucking insane that what they did know doesn't equal what ended up happening. And they just don't want, they're just not going to say nothing.
Well, you can't win. Look at that guy in the Delphi case, that Richard Allen.
Right.
If he's not guilty, I mean, he called the police and said, and to see if he could help. And he ended up getting 130 years.
Right. I don't think that any lock was changed. I think the father said he repaired the lock, Norma, or he did something. I don't think the locks were changed. I think the father came out and contradicted that early on.
No, he said something else that sounded like that, but that's not what happened.
Yeah, he didn't change the locks.
He said that Vanna changed a lot, yeah.
I thought that he had come out and said he had done nothing of the sort.
Yeah, exactly. He said that Vanna had changed a lot as a person.
Now, Dr. Snowflake makes a point, and this is why I came out tonight. Part of the big reason for the stream was the FBI has a goal that all crime investigations are going to be forensic. No gumshoe detectives, and that they're going to use the electronics and scientific means to find and prosecute their criminals. That's their goal for by the time we get to 2035. And that's why I said earlier that it's to our own fucking peril that they move in that direction. And there's a place for all of this scientific stuff, but you've got to be able to show you're accused as being at that house at that time with a lot of the scientific evidence. Now, I don't argue against videos, even phone location data, as long as it's a verifiable source and it can be verified by other people. But in this case, none of that seems to be true. And we'll have to wait and see. And people keep saying there's evidence we don't know, and all the evidence that we do know has been motioned to be right. In limine, it's been motioned into suppression. It's been motioned to be excluded. And if, for instance, a lot of people run around, you don't know there isn't a direct witness. Well, if there were, there'd have been a motion to exclude. Guarantee it. Because otherwise, the defense attorney isn't doing her job. Even if she knows they're not going to exclude the witness, they have to file a motion to exclude the witness. A lot of people don't realize that about the law. And so when it comes to evidentiary admission, you see that through this entire case before trial, the evidence they have. They're not going to show up at trial and all of a sudden, oh, Brian Koberger's sister snitched on him. No, folks. It won't work that way. That's not how trials work. The judge would not be allowed to let that come in if it wasn't discovered. And once it's discovered, every motion under the sun is going to be tossed at the court to exclude. And so until evidence shows up that nobody has known about, and some has, as far as the amount of DNA samples, as far as the timeline, as far as the activity of the dog, blah, blah, blah. But none of it is any information that is inclusive to or inculpatory against Koberger. It's still all exculpatory evidence. So what they've held back isn't the magic smoking gun. They've held back what the public should have known in the very beginning, that this case is very circumstantial, and you have to buy into the argument the state is making about a picture or a phone ping. And to me, that's an awful thin line to hold over someone's head for murder. You're going to kill them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, I just happen to wonder right now, when Dylan contacted that Eric Gower driver guy at 210, maybe she was trying to get a ride for somebody else, like one of her friends or whatever.
Isn't he an older married guy?
Yeah, but he works at the campus, and he's part of the program where they give people rides, and so it's really it would make sense, like if somebody who normally doesn't get rides from him needed a ride and texted if they were friends with Dylan, hey, can you give me a ride or whatever? And
seems like anybody connected to that evening, not that they had anything to do with drugs, but it seems like anybody they had any connection with was in a particular type of employment that facilitates the movement of drugs. And I don't, right? I mean, the DoorDash and the private driver. Now, I'm not saying that that any of that has anything to do with anything, but it is curious. And her fact that she called him, could the call been just enough to get a drop off? We don't know. I mean, I used to sell drugs quite a bit, and that's really all it would take. You would page me, I'd see your phone number, and I only dealt with regular clients. So I knew if you needed a quarter ounce, you were a pound purchaser, whatever your normal habits were. When I saw your number come up on my fucking pager, I knew what to come equipped with. I mean, so that's like old school. That's been like, now they'll use Uber and DoorDash and they'll use other means to move the drugs, but it's still the same system. You don't even have to have a conversation about it. You just,
and it's better using a driver, because then if you get in trouble, you can just leave the stuff in the car and they can't be arrested for it.
Yeah, the discovery deadline passed. And that's the point, Mikey. Your motions to suppress, your motions to eliminate, all of the things that you see, the Frank's hearing, the request for Frank's hearing, all the motions and arguments that were done, you would know of any surprise or any damning evidence against Brian. And I said in the very beginning that damning evidence would have been in the probable cause affidavit. And for people to say no just shows what kind of non-thinkers you are. Of course, if you have a solid piece of thing, and no, you've never been arrested before. Where I live, they call them they don't call them a PCA, they call it an accusatory instrument. And the policeman writes this all out in freehand. At least he did last night. It's a long time. Maybe they type it out. But if there was a witness that saw something, a direct witness, the name and the identity and even the location of the witness would be kept secret. But what they saw would be included. It may be blacked out, but you'd know that there was a direct witness. There would be no way for you not to know that. If you're the one of the being, you're defending yourself, it would have to be discovered to you. And there would be motions to suppress or eliminate that person's testimony based on some case law that you found. Because that's what court's all about. It's about precedent, which is based on or cases that have already been hashed out and ruled upon. And that's what lawyers are. That's what a good lawyer will have himself a law clerk or access to a law library. And if he's got both in his office, then you have yourself a lawyer that's capable of being a good lawyer if he uses those to his, to do his job.
Yeah.
This channel is on radar. Maybe tracking why, Twizzy. I don't know what that means, Mikey, but yeah. So must have been quite the little conversation. He said he worked on her locks. Okay. He worked on her locks, but he didn't change the locks. Was that fair enough, Norma?
No, he was talking about Xana, because she, as a person, she had changed a lot. She was more mature. You know what I mean?
Changed a lot? No, there was talk in the beginning that the father changed the locks.
I know, but then when they played that over again, they said, oh no, he was saying how she had become more mature and she had changed a lot.
Yeah, there's been so many.
People misunderstood that. Misunderstood that as saying change the lock.
I was on that. I go to this Facebook thing just to fuck with the people that are guilters. So I am kind of an asshole, and I admit it, but just trying to get them to think and realize that the argument you're making about the 6 other samples is the same argument you were screaming at the innocent guy, the innocenters, whatever you want to call them. They were making that argument about the transfer DNA. And now you're using that same argument against the other 6 samples. It's just, neither one of you are thinking, because innocent or guilt isn't relevant. It's innocent till proven guilty, and it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And what have we seen here that places Brian Kohlberger at that scene beyond a reasonable doubt? And the answer is, to my view of the information, nothing. Is there something? I can't imagine. It's going to come down to their police expert arguing this and Cy Ray and the defense arguing that. And and in the end, I'm sorry, you're innocent till proven guilty. And that's what I would make sure that the jury hears that all the time. My client's innocent. My information's accurate. Yeah. I'm not coming up, and I'm not suggesting people are lying, but their interpretation was based on this much information, and that's not enough to come to their conclusion. They're thinking that's what it means, but here's the truth. It's going to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, there. I mean, look, all three, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee, they had either left or were in the process of leaving their sororities. And Ethan was on his way out of his. He was about to get kicked out of his fraternity.
Was he?
Yeah, because he couldn't keep his grades up. Yeah, even that guy Barry Ocha was that guy's real smart. That Barry Ocha, and he was tutoring Ethan, but even that didn't help.
Right.
Ethan wasn't a serious student. That's all.
And I honestly think our criminal justice system, in a nutshell, is just on display to show that it isn't about justice.
Oh, right, exactly.
We have an unjustice system. Thanks, Kim Young. You're right.
That's what Maddie's mom said. She said that the justice system is not for the victims.
No, it's not, and it's not for the accused as well.
No. And that's why you don't ever want to be a witness to anything. You never want to get involved in any way, shape, or form, because they can turn you into a suspect, and just hanging on your head.
Right. It's they've perverted it to the point where it's just like I've been I watched some TV shows that as a kid I wouldn't watch, but my parents did. And you'll see a lot of those old TV shows versus new ones where in the modern ones, these guys are going and picking locks and doing things without warrants and catching their proper criminal. But it's the police and or their consultants and or the people that they intermix with that are breaking the law to try to serve the law. And you can't do that. And you see that on TV. We've been brainwashed to the point where we don't get it. These TV shows, these true crime shows, the forensic stuff, you're being programmed to see the world the way they want you to see it, rather than trying to examine what it is they're doing. And it isn't acceptable for a policeman to break. That's what I said. As Americans, if you see a policeman speeding, you should call in his fucking car number and the time of day. We shouldn't stand for it, because that's where it begins. They're the law and you're the citizen, and there should be no divide between the two of us.
In the old days, in the 50s, my dad, he was real young when he first moved to Cleveland. He ended up becoming best friends. His best friend's brothers like ran the rackets, on that side of town.
Right.
And he was living with those guys. And he said that every now and then they wouldn't have a guy who could go to the police station downtown. So my dad would go down there with the money, take the payoff money down there. And he laughed. He said, "Yeah, you just walk up to the same clerk everybody else is standing there with his speeding tickets and stuff. And you hand her this brown paper bag full of cash and say, 'This is for so and so,' and she said, 'Okay.'" And it was just like so normal. He said it was funny.
I've seen a lot of different criminal fucking prosecutions. I've seen racketeering, RICO case, and the RICO case put the cops in jail.
Yeah, a friend of mine from high school ended up. This was in Cleveland too. He after high school he ended up with this other guy. They kind of put together a little crime syndicate, and they were trafficking, coke. This was the 80s, with the police department. Like they were partners with the police, and then they all got caught, and like a dozen police got arrested for it. And the guy I know, I was in high school with, he went into the witness protection program.
Oh, that's a hell of a place to have to exist, huh?
Oh yeah, but at least he didn't go to prison like the cops.
No.
So I'm just saying that's how crooked. But it's definitely, like, a lot of people don't believe it's that bad. Like a friend of mine, when he was like a teenager, his dad had a what do you call it, a escort service.
Yeah.
And the police were trying to shake him down, make him pay, weekly or whatever, to leave him alone, and he wouldn't do it, and so they arrested him. And he ended up taking it to the box, as they say, and he ended up making case law. He won. He was facing like 20 years, but he took it on. He went to trial. He didn't take a plea, and there's case law for him.
In my area, my father was arrested for racketeering. And in the end, it's a long story, but in the end, what happened was he used to do that, but when they started to jack him and force him to try to pay them, he refused, and he put cameras in his ceiling. And their threats to put cocaine in his kids' cars and throw them in the clink, and all of the shit that they were doing to try to extort him, while accusing him of racketeering, because he did have a place where old gangsters, old fucking criminals would go and play gin at the place that he had. But there was no, the biggest part with gambling is it's not illegal to sit down and play poker, but it's illegal for the house to take a vig, or for the house to take a percentage of the pot won or played. So if you're playing a hand of cards and the vig is $500 a hand, that's where they call it the rake. And that's where they get their money. The guy that runs the house, he don't get the house because he don't make all his money because he's playing for the deal on the cards. The house gets a rake anyway. That was a part of my family's life for decades. But when they finally tried to close the loop on him, he was old, and all of his customers were old. I mean, old, fucking old. One of them was still driven around in a limousine, but he didn't have any ties to any kind of crime at this point. He was like 90. But so these guys are all playing for nickels or gin, and they're all chipping in for the coffee and the fucking pasta and for the rent. Nobody's making any money off of anybody. It's like a fucking regular club. And they came in and they tried to jack them. And so my old man kept track of what the cops were doing. And they did legitimately get some guys to pay them. There were actual after-hour clubs that paid the police from being threatened. You pay us or we're going to fucking take you down. And so there literally was that happening in this group of people. But in the case of my father, he stood out. He would not plead guilty. He would not take a plea. And when they got to court, what happened was the production of evidence had to be provided. And the production of evidence ended up being envelopes full of paper the same size as a bill, a dollar bill. All the money was gone. And all the guys that pled guilty, because they in fact were paying the cops to keep quiet, because the cops were telling them they'd throw them in prison if they didn't. Those guys that pled guilty were brought back into court, and that was expunged. And the police all went to jail that were doing that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then they found the police chief wasn't part of that scam, but the police chief was taking money out of the drug enforcement money that was being sent to the police department and spending it on him and his family. And they did an accounting of those books, and he ended up in prison. So in this particular case for racketeering, yeah, there was criminal activity. But yet the cops were the biggest criminals in the whole fucking scam. Fortunately, they all went to jail. And years later, you guys want to hear something funny? This is how the world really works. 10 or 15 or 20 years later, in all fairness, don't I end up doing a job for one of the cops that did that shit to my old man? I own a construction company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's going to me, your name is familiar. Boy, that name's familiar. He didn't know that I was his kid, as far as I know, but I did the job. He paid me. Everything went perfect. And as far as it's been 15, 20 years ago, everything is still fine. But what a fucked up world we live in, right?
Well, yeah. Like my dad said that they had card games. The guys held, just about one of their rackets. And he said you get a new hotel room, and then the night beat cop, would figure you out. And so you'd have to start paying him. And then the day shift would figure it out, and then you have to start paying them, and then their boss, you'd have to start paying him, and then it got to be too expensive, and you had to go find a new hotel, a new room to start over.
A lot of things that people don't realize, like a lot of modern cops, there's this guy, Detective John, back before I was born. So back when you go after World War II, a lot of these after-hour clubs actually brought order to areas of the cities where they worked. And a lot of times the police didn't interrupt or prevent these guys from doing what they were doing simply for the fact that they provided neighborhood security. They knew what was going on around all of these after-hour clubs. It was wrong, and it was technically illegal, yet the policemen weren't grifting on them. They weren't trying to put them in jail for what they were doing, because on their own beat, when police actually used to live in the cities they patrolled, right? Those particular places where everybody would go to sell stolen property or and they could get in front. It was part of the community. It wasn't seen as this, this racketeering RICO stuff as it eventually became. And I'm sure there are good reasons it did, but the main thing that took place, if you ever watched The Godfather, you could kind of see that in a smaller scale all over the country. There were a lot of little places like that. They would lend money. There was some serious criminal stuff with racketeering, but in a lot of cases, like especially where I live, a lot of these guys, there weren't murders. They weren't killing people. And that eventually started happening in the 70s. I'm not going to name the guy that got blown up, because then you'll know where I live. But eventually it got out of hand. But from the 40s until the 70s, it was really more in tune with the community itself.
Hey, Sarge, the car they used to blow him up came from my neighborhood.
Did it?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I actually met that guy before he was blown up. I was a little kid. Yeah, I didn't know who I was meeting. I used to hang out with a retired gangster. He was retired because of the time he'd spent in jail. But you'll never will meet a more elegant, a more kind. There's a word that I want to use. That's just, this person, when they talk to you, You could have been smoking crack 2 minutes ago, and if you encountered this person, you would feel like you were the most important person in the world. They were just so fucking over the top, polite and welcoming and kind. It was like that motherfucker would cut you down with a machete or a machine gun in a heartbeat under the conditions that required that.
Yeah.
You would never know that this person was capable of that. I'll never forget this guy. He taught me how to play cards and everything. But I think eloquent might be the best description.
Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds
right. Very eloquent man, very nice, and oh man, it was just awesome. Would never let you pay for anything ever. And I picked up that habit. When I go out with my friends, nobody pays, I pay. Yeah. So they were true psychopaths. Well, that might even describe me. There's nothing wrong with being a psychopath so long as you know it and you're comfortable with it. That's what I say.
You're not hurting anyone.
Right. You're not actively being psycho. I'm on YouTube being a psycho. Who could that hurt?
Yeah. My earliest memory, the first time like your dad takes you somewhere without your mom going.
Yeah. Well,
like dads are kind of slow at doing it. The first place my dad took me without my mom going was a chop shop.
Oh, that's awesome. You didn't even know you were in a chop shop.
I didn't even know. No, the neighborhood. It was so funny because I heard him on the phone a few days before that. One of his friends, church friends, was looking for an engine, and I heard my dad on the phone talking to someone, and then he called that friend. He said, "Well, the guy, he doesn't have one of those engines, but he's expecting to have one in a day or two."
Listen, when I didn't know who my real father was until I was like 17. Oh, okay. And I figured it out. And then I went to their house. And I found I found my real mother and father. And on that night, my real father took me for a ride. And he took me into areas that I'd never been. And took me and, introduced me to a few people. Got me back in the car, stopped the car, and he's just looking at me. And he says, I can give you $10,000 and you can go away and never come back. He said, or if you're gonna stick around, if you want to be part of the family, you can do that as well, but you're gonna have to follow the rules of the family. And he just looks at me, and I'm just sitting there. Yeah, okay. He goes, no, I mean you're gonna have to follow the rules. He beeps his horn and flashes his lights, and a guy comes out of this fucking building. And he walks over to the side window. He says, this fucking creep needs to be taken down. Can you do something with him? And the guy just starts walking around the car. And I'm fucking freaking out. Like, oh my God, what the fuck? The guy comes to the car door. It's locked. And my father looks at me and says, because it's going to be that easy to put an end to you if you don't follow the rules. That was my first introduction to my father.
Wow.
That was fucked up. And then, life went on from there. But that was to me like the most impactful moment I'd ever had with my father. And they were surprised. They had no idea it was going to show up on their doorstep. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
That gentleman, listen, that gentleman was later arrested for taking a machine gun to a fucking by the hour fucking motel. And taking out a room with people in it. He ended up spending 20 years in prison after that. Got out on good behavior. Nobody died, but a bunch of people were tore up with bullets. Yeah, man. So I came from a very, very fucked up past. And I had some very, very fucked up people to look up to or at least get guidance from. And that's how I got into drugs and selling drugs and being a fuckhead.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I had some situations that the other kids weren't having.
So I come from an exceptional family.
Yeah. All I can say is my old man, when he told somebody you can't do that anymore, they couldn't do it anymore. I mean, he told somebody cosmicism. I'm talking about like, everybody dies. I mean, so it doesn't really. And anytime you have an accomplishment, it's also a loss because of you're closer to death. So the time that you consume the accomplishment. So I'm just saying that there's, look at what goes on in the world, and maybe 4 people being murdered isn't as bad as we're making it out to be.
Well, I don't think that that's actually an accurate depiction. I mean, to be fair with you, and I don't mean to be rude, but that's the kind of basis people are thinking from, and it's just not right. It is as bad as we think it to be, and it's even worse. And the fact of the matter is, you see all these demonstrations in America. Ask yourself, where do these people get all them professionally printed fucking signs and statements? Where does that come from? It comes from paid organizations that are called NGOs. They pay to have these people go out. They pay the people. They bust them in. When you look at what happened with, and I'm not, that Floyd, what was his name? I'm totally against what that cop did to Floyd Patterson, I think his name is. But you go look at the demonstrations around that, and those people, a lot of those were bust in. There's agitators, and they're inside of our country. And they got people that are willing. They put ads on fucking Craigslist. Be a professional demonstrator, $25 an hour. Transportation included. No, there's evidence of this, and yet the American public are not being told this. So you see 5,000 people demonstrating, you think these people are against whatever it is they're against. You really think it's real, and it's not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the nature of like the life forms on this planet is that they're destructive, and that you're lucky if things are going good and you got people treating each other well. That's really lucky, because the baseline, the fundamental truth of this planet is that life here destroys other life, and that's the nature.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but look, I think it's a choice, and I think what happens is that willful ignorance is the issue, and that there is really very few people. Like, I'll give you an example. Take Joe Rogan, take somebody from the left like Bill Maher, take Tucker Carlson. None of these people are talking about solutions. They're just selling you the outrage of it.
Yeah, but I'm not talking. Nature of this world, the nature of life, and I would love to find out who did. I'd like to see this crime solved. Definitely want to see Brian Koberger, exonerated. But I just from looking into this case and everything, I'm starting to realize that I've just kind of been naive. I'm being naive and thinking, one, that there's anything I can do about it. Two, that there's not a lot worse going on than that. And it's just sort of the nature of the world. I mean, there's always going to be murders. I mean, it's just the way it's going to be.
There's always going to be murders, and so, but that isn't the underlying issue here. The underlying issue is how your government adheres to the limits we placed on them. And that's what needs to be the only important issue. And that's why knowing different things matter. If there's nonprofits that are paying people to demonstrate that otherwise wouldn't be able to demonstrate without the not-for-profit, then they shouldn't be there. That should not be a not-for-profit. They should be banned. And the person that's doing it should be charged with a crime against the country. And they should be, see, if you hold people to account for reasonable reasons, and you could show that these reasons are reasonable beyond a reasonable doubt, and you start holding people to account, and you get more people active in that. Like I say, if you see a policeman speeding, you should make the call to his barracks. You should, as an American citizen. That guy has no right to speed just because he wears a badge. And it starts with the little things. And there's never any place that you can go for solutions and what we could do together. Like I've always argued, that we all need to argue against user agreements that require you to give them their information or you can't use my product. I say, fuck you. Okay, but listen. But here's the thing. No. This isn't. You go to Facebook and you got to surrender your personal information that they trade for money. And you're not. Here's the thing. No. You can't have my personal information to trade for money. That just shouldn't be allowed. We're Americans. We have privacy rights, and we've somehow forgotten that. There's nobody out there arguing that user agreements need to be banned, and we need to force Congress to pass laws. And you need to have it like in this case where the FBI went into a website they're not supposed to be in according to policy, but it's not breaking the law. Well, fuck you, it's not. You went into a website that told its users that the police aren't going to gain access without your permission or without a proper warrant. And they did it anyway. That's a fucking problem. Yeah. Whether this kid did it or not, that's a huge issue. And yet, who's out there telling us all to push back? And there is nobody doing it. They're all out there telling you about the outrage, but they're not offering a solution that we could all come together on and do nothing more than simply put our name on a protest piece of paper or something and start sending it to your congressman and demand certain things be restored.
That's using the Idaho 4 case as an example of another problem, which is kind of separate. But the FBI, so the prosecution and the FBI and everybody, they're trying to act like somehow the activities of the FBI is separate from the prosecution of Brian Kohberger. But it's like, I don't know what it would be in criminal law, but in civil law, it's vicarious liability, joint liability.
Well, and listen, in constitutional law, look at, there's a test for your Fourth Amendment for it to be applied. And it's a very simple test. If privacy is expected, then privacy is there. So you leave your home and you cannot expect privacy because you've entered the public. In your home, you can have a natural tendency to expect privacy. Therefore, they need proper probable cause and warrants to enter your premises. And when you join a DNA website where you're talking arguably your most personal scientific information is being handled, that tells you that it will not allow your stuff to be touched or viewed by anybody without a warrant or your permission, you have a reasonable expectation to privacy under that user agreement. And this is what bothers me with a lot of lawyers, including Ann. A lot of the reason abortion lasted 50 years is because they don't know how to argue the law. And when I joined 23andMe, I have a reasonable expectation that law enforcement will not have access to my data. That's the test, not whether breaking a policy in the DOJ is the test. That's not the test. The only reason the policy is there is because it's saying without saying to go beyond this requires a warrant with probable cause. That's what it should say. Right.
When his dad gave his DNA to that whatever service it was, they did that for a specific reason.
Correct.
That DNA was supposed to be used for specific purposes. In my opinion, there doesn't have to be a written agreement that if you're giving someone else.
Well, no, but it is a public website to which public information can be shared with other users. You can connect yourself to people you never knew. So let me be clear. This is why Ann fucked up. That's the argument the state's making. The state's absolutely right. You're entering your data, your DNA data, whatever it might be, into a database that's openly shared with other people. That's fair enough. That's a great argument. However, because what you're doing in the database is for legal purposes in criminal court, you need a warrant to get my information because you don't stand in line to find out if you're my cousin. You're standing in line secretly to find out if I'm a criminal. And under that context, they needed a warrant to go into 23andMe.
That's what I'm saying.
Their reason for being there is not the reason the website is in place, and the website.
Exactly. It's not why he gave his DNA information.
Right, but the way I'm explaining it is the legal argument that she should have actually came with, and she didn't.
You're taking it from a different angle, but we're saying the same thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I'm saying the same thing. Just I'm taking it from the.
And she went, you know what she went after? She went after the HIPAA because people are stuck on the idea. Why is the FBI sample 2.5 times bigger than the Othram sample? And that's because the Othram sample didn't include all of his medical information. You see,
Well, HIPAA is not as ironclad as people think it is.
well, no, you
Yeah,
can, but they didn't. This is what she argued instead of the argument I'm making, and you're saying you're on the same page as me. She made the argument about HIPAA. She's telling you that the FBI used parts of the DNA they're prohibited from using. And they went into databases that they're prohibited to enter without a warrant. But she concentrated on the HIPAA, and she shouldn't have. She should have concentrated on the reasonable expectation to privacy, which is what you have when you join a website that tells you your stuff will not be shared with law enforcement without warrants or without your permission. That's an expectation of privacy. That's the argument she should have made. What she argued was that the sample that Othram produced and gave to the FBI also included medical information that Othram excluded in their search because there's HIPAA laws. That's why Othram's sample got 2.5 times bigger with the FBI, not because the FBI invented it. It's because the entire sample, their entire analysis included the medical information.
well, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this part. They're trying to understand, how did the FBI get a bigger sample? And I'm telling you, when you take a look at what Ann argued and you take a look at the facts, that's the only thing that you can surmise, is that the FBI didn't use just the Othram view. They also included all of the sample's information.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be a HIPAA violation.
That's what she was arguing. And I'm saying her argument should have been that, but more importantly, it should have been simply the straightforward Fourth Amendment argument. That website prohibits your activity. You know that. Your policy points that out. You should have went for a warrant, but the problem is law enforcement couldn't have provided probable cause to search for anybody. You see the quagmire? That's why the FBI wanted it kept secret. That's why it's considered a tip.
Yeah, I think the end problem is she sits down. She thinks she's sitting down to play a game of chess. You know, where you and the other opponent, you follow the same rules, and that's not what's happening.
Right. Yeah. She expects the government to play by the rules that are written in the books.
Yeah, and they're not.
No.
And Judge Hippler, he holds out false hope that things are going to be done the right way, but then in the end, he does the opposite. He does the wrong thing.
Now there's someone that Heather Fitzgerald. She's a very clever woman. She does her own stream. And Heather, are you agreeing with what I'm saying when you say the Prometheus? Are you agreeing with the point that I'm making about the sample being 2.5 times larger because of all of the medical information the FBI kept within it? See, their sample, and Othram admitted that their sample never would have led them to Brian Kohlberger. They openly admit that. They connected it to 4 brothers, right? And they say it was a low count connection. And that's when the FBI came in. So here's where there's 2 possible issues here. One is it a mixed sample? It may very well be. Even though it's a low count number, it still was derived from that DNA sample. Therefore, if you pull another name out of your hat, that makes it a mixed sample. You see? That's one argument. The other argument that she's making was the FBI had 2.5 times the sample that Othram had produced. And that was that sample that they went into databases that they're prohibited. And only in those databases and only with that sample were they able to come to an idea that Kohlberger was the source of that DNA, which they were later proven to be true when they did a buccal swab. So the state said, we don't want to use the IgG or the PCA or anything previous to this. The buccal swab is going to be what we use. That's how that's when everything started blowing up. And now you look at the PCA and you see the PCA doesn't have any evidence against Kohlberger. None. They don't want it. They don't even want to use it. But the PCA should have been the reason the grand jury shouldn't have indicted. The PCA should have been the reason there was never a warrant. And it should be the reason that this case was kicked out of court. But somehow there's a part of law I either don't know or these people just don't give a fuck.
It's both. I mean, they're breaking the law. They know they are, but they have the whole state. The whole state involved so they can do what they want. And then also, apparently people don't give a shit. Like I said, there's 2 million people in Idaho. You would think that some of them would be concerned about driving through Moscow. What's going to happen to them? But apparently they're not. They should be trying to. I mean, if my town that I live in was capable of doing stuff like that and could do it to me, I would be worried about it. But apparently in Idaho, they don't pay much attention.
I don't know if they don't pay much attention to this. The problem is that there's really no one out there pointing out specific issues that have a big voice and then offering up solutions that we could all get on board with that wouldn't require any more effort than the same effort we put into getting on the internet. You know what I mean? Arguing for our privacy under these websites things. Look, charge me to be on Facebook. I'll make a decision whether I want to be a member or not. Elon did that with X. But see, that's the first site we should attack. So you're going to let me pay $8 a month to give me a blue check. Give me back my personal data. Stop taking personal data, Elon. He's the one that, honestly, this issue should be put in Rogan's fucking hands or others like Rogan. And that should be the argument and the direction people should get behind. No more selling or collecting our data. Stop it. Charge me. If you need the money to maintain your website, charge every user. And then the user will decide whether they want to be there or not. That's how commerce fucking works. The guy back in the day in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s weren't trading your personal ID. They were getting your credit cards, but they weren't allowed to do anything with that information or they'd get arrested. Nowadays, it's fucking that's your biggest violation. And that's why you see the FBI pulling the bullshit they're pulling in this case, calling what they did a tip. I don't know how that's a tip when you did all that investigative work. When did investigating a crime become a tip? How did they become tipsters? Yeah. And the FBI knows what they're doing is wrong. That's why they try to hide it behind the tip.
And the fact they won't show their work, I mean, I don't know, how's it evidence? I mean, basically you're saying it's Brian because we say so. I mean, you have to lay out your evidence, and they won't do that apparently.
They didn't keep their record. I want to just answer Yvonne real quick. Here's the way I'm trying. The way I understand it is this, Yvonne, is that your DNA contains all of the information, including your medical information, if you so choose to look at the medical information, but you can keep that out of your search. That's as I understand it. Now, I could be wrong, and if that's perfectly fine if I'm wrong, someone can educate me. And what I think happened here was that the FBI included all of that medical data, including the other markers that you're looking for to try to hook someone up to a family tree. So I understand it to be that there's DNA will give you more information than just who you are, and that you're able to look at this information segmentedly as a complete package, or you can siphon out and only look at the markers that would connect him to a family tree without his medical markers. That's how I understand it. I could be completely wrong. And if I am wrong, I definitely would want to know what's correct here.
I don't know. Does anybody know? Anybody in
Heather or some of those other people, some smart people coming in. A guy Thomas got out. He would know. But that's how I understand it. And I could be completely inaccurate here. And I don't want to give misinformation to people. But
right.
But it does explain how the FBI sample a certain base that they're allowed to search. I got that. Search those same databases, which is consumers, not law enforcement. Law enforcement has GD mentioned and also search my heritage. I understand that they did all that, but I'm talking about the sample size that they were able to work with was 2.5 times bigger than Othram's. And my interpretation of that is that they were not including, Othram was not including any medical information in their search. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I've never really studied DNA because I'm more interested in what happened. What actually happened at 11/22. And so I haven't gotten into detail on the DNA because I just feel like the payout for me is not going to be there. I think they're going to do whatever they want with it. And they got what's her name? Vicka Marlowe or something?
Yeah.
To clear that up. So I mean, I feel like it's a lot to learn on DNA to be able to know this. So that's why I haven't done anything with it.
And I know
Why-
just enough
why-
to I know just enough to be dangerous, and even worse, I know just enough to make it sound reasonable. That's even worse,
Yeah, you do.
right? And that's even worse. Somebody's saying they do not think I'm wrong. Okay, they don't know. But again, so it's something where I could be wrong, and I accept that. And I want people to know that my interpretation of why the sample was bigger with the FBI than Othram may be inaccurate, but I'm connecting her argument over HIPAA to the FBI sample. That's why I'm saying
Yeah,
this.
no, I would say that makes sense. I think, I think there's enough connection there to make that.
Right. And that's the only reason I'm making it. But again, there's room for error, folks. But just remember, your Uncle Sarge is almost never wrong. The chances that I'm wrong are probably less than the chances of probably anything else you'll think about.
I thought you were wrong. I thought you were wrong one time in the show. It turned out I was mistaken.
There, you see, they write from a direct caller. Yeah. I'm right so often I piss myself off. Right? Holy fuck.
Well, it's either what you're saying, with the medical information. It's either that or something very similar,
Right. They could have invented DNA out of thin air. Right?
Right. Yeah. So it's got to be, they didn't just put sawdust in there and
Right.
call it Brian Cover.
And I would question if the sample is a mixed sample because you got 4 brothers and Brian. How did that happen? Right?
Yeah. And, the thing with this case is always going to come down to, they didn't pursue all this other,
Right.
high value evidence at all. And, it's over right there for me. I'm never going to believe anything until it was DNA there are figured out. And then the things they did with the videos, letting all the video expire, and the fact that we have the only video they've got comes from friends or police.
Well,
it's
I just want to hit on this one point.
uh-huh.
I want to hit on this point. The guidelines of the DOJ. See, you're all getting caught on the word guidelines. The word guideline is used because what the DOJ is saying to the officers is that you're stepping outside the bounds of the constitutional limits. These are guidelines that you should follow. They're not giving you permission to break the guideline without any consequence. But they're using these words in a very fucking patronizing way. For you to get access to a database where an American citizen expects privacy requires a warrant. So what the government's done, and they've done this all over the place, the government will hire a private contractor. They'll ship their chemical weapon research to a private company. And therefore you can't get discovery or you can't ask FOIA for a freedom of information cannot apply to a private business. So the word guidelines is because they do this. They go around the Constitution by engaging private company. And this needs to be stopped. If the government is going to do something on behalf of the American people, be it our national defense or our criminal investigations, it must remain within the government, not contracted out to somebody that cannot be accountable. And this is a huge problem in America. This is how these politicians and these criminal bureaucrats are doing what they're doing. And that's what I mean when I say there's nobody out there offering solutions or even explaining the problem as simply as I've explained it here. That guideline is not, it's way more than a guideline. That's like a trigger word for the fucking agent. Well, we better call Carrie over at the fucking genealogy lab that works over at fucking Jerkoff's laboratory because we can't do it personally. That's what that word is. It's like they're plotting against us to get their own way. And that's not how your government is set up to work.
No, you're right. And
where's Joe Rogan and Tucker and all these other people pointing it out to Americans? Because the real outrage is in that this information is useless to me, right? It's like overeating. unless there's some way to solve these issues. They won't go away with the Koberger case because there isn't anybody out there pointing this stuff out on a grand enough scale to make a difference.
But that's kind of what I'm pointing out is the grand scale is that the grand scale for this existence is that we're never going to have that what we want.
Well, listen, if Joe Rogan got onto the points that I made here and others, and they kept on those points where you got hundreds of millions of people listening, this would be an issue that people would address. That's the catch-22 in this existence, is that everything that exists today can exist in any shape or form that we see fit, but the people need